the mental transmitter of Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51 First Intimate Contact. Yashida Shiro's confidence proved genuine. Just 3 days later, he tracked down Zhang Xuan and his ghost army. That day, Zhang Xuan and his troops were conducting their usual raid on a Japanese encampment. They were enjoying the killing spree when a fiery red streak of light streaked through the dark night sky, appearing in an instant above the camp. To Zhang Xuan's astonishment, the streak transformed into a figure and slowly descended to the ground. Seeing the newcomer, Zhang Xuan's heart raced, and he called out, "Sunfire, you're not Chinese." His Chinese was awkward, making it clear he was a Japanese. Hearing the newcomer's resolute words, Zhang Xuan's anger flared, and he shouted, "How can you say I'm not Chinese? I've already killed all the Chinese mutants." "What did you say?" A fire surged in Zhang Xuan's chest. Having discovered the existence of a large group of mutants within the Japanese army, Zhang Xuan sought to recruit Chinese mutants to form his own powerful mutant force. But to Zhang Xuan's surprise, Mr. Song gave him a completely unexpected answer. "There are no mutants in China." Zhang Xuan couldn't help but exclaim, "How is that possible?" Mr. Song looked at Zhang Xuan and immediately explained, 10 years ago, there were reports of mutants, but in the past 10 years, Chinese mutants seem to have vanished without a trace. There's no news at all. What happened?" Zhang Xuan couldn't believe that Chinese mutants would suddenly vanish without a trace. "Something must have happened. We've been searching for a long time, but there's nothing," Mr. Song said, shaking his head in frustration. With no Chinese mutants, Zhang Xuan had to abandon his plan to form a mutant team and gradually forgot about it. Now, suddenly reminded by the sudden appearance of Sunfire, Zhang Xuan finally understood what had happened. "There are no mutants in China. You'll die next." Sunfire looked at Zhang Xuan coldly, saying calmly, "By the way, I'm Yashida Shiro, the Sunfire you're referring to." Zhang Xuan's rage grew. A teleportation suddenly appeared in Yashida Shiro, and he thrust a dagger forward, slicing at Yashida Shiro's carotid artery. A trifle, with a cold snort, Yashida Shiro's entire body erupted in a blazing flame. The orange-red flames, as if possessed of life, quickly enveloped the incoming dagger, instantly melting it. Zhang Xuan hadn't anticipated this, and remained frozen in his sleep until a sharp, burning pain shot through his hand. Only then did he instinctively drop the dagger, which had practically dissolved into a puddle of mud. "Now, experience my power," Yashida Shiro snorted again, and with a fist etched with vibrant red flames, he struck Zhang Xuan in the chest. Having witnessed the power of Sunfire's flames, Zhang Xuan dared not challenge him. Without a second thought, he quickly retreated, taking the entire camp with him. Zhang Xuan's actions clearly exceeded Yashida Shiro's expectations. Looking at the empty camp, Yashida Shiro's face, hidden behind the sun god mask, finally revealed a hint of anger. After leading everyone back to the valley camp, Zhang Xuan disappeared again, only to reappear at the Howling Commandos camp. "Guys, I'm in trouble," Zhang Xuan said urgently upon reappearing, before anyone could say anything. "That Sunfire has appeared, and I'm no match for him." For the first time, Zhang Xuan felt a sense of frustration about his own abilities. His teleportation and escape abilities were unparalleled, but his combat abilities were woefully inadequate. Cloning was a remarkable ability, but without a powerful ability to replicate, it was completely useless. Sunfire? That Japanese mutant. Natasha had originally learned about Sunfire from interrogating Japanese mutants. She was the first to react, her expression growing serious. Zhang Xuan nodded and explained with a bitter smile, "Just now, I was leading my men to clear out the Japs, but he suddenly showed up. We exchanged blows, and before my dagger even touched him, it was melted by the flames that emanated from his body, so powerful." Nick Fury looked at Zhang Xuan in shock, his single eye filled with disbelief. Howard, who happened to be behind the camp, immediately stood up upon hearing Zhang Xuan's words, defending himself. "Impossible. Your dagger is indestructible, just like the captain's shield. Flames can't melt it either, because they absorb the energy of the flames, but it really melted," Zhang Xuan said with certainty, trying to recall the battle from just a few minutes ago. "The ultra-high temperature of the flames can cause errors in your vision, perhaps leading you to mistakenly believe it's melted." Howard frowned, thought for a moment, and then explained, but in fact, it hasn't melted. Zhang Xuan was a little skeptical, but he didn't dwell on the issue any further. He shook his head and changed the subject. Forget it, let's not talk about the dagger anymore. Let's talk about the sunfire. What's everyone's idea? What surprised Zhang Xuan was that as soon as he finished speaking, he found everyone looking at him strangely. Zhang Xuan was about to ask, but Steve spoke first. Alex, we're in trouble too, and we were just looking for your help. Huh? There's a very powerful mutant coming out of... He can absorb all energy, even bullets, and then release it again. Steve's face was bitter, his eyes dim. We've already failed several times at his hands. He's blocked numerous allied attacks, causing tremendous losses. Listening to Steve's introduction, Zhang Xuan's mind flickered, and a thought suddenly crossed his mind. Sebastian Shaw, you know him too. Carter happened to walk in with a stack of documents, his face etched with fatigue. I've heard of him, just heard of him. Zhang Xuan chuckled dryly and was about to change the subject when a brilliant idea suddenly struck him. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became, and he couldn't help but laugh. Hearing Zhang Xuan's laughter, everyone turned to look at him, their faces filled with surprise. I found a way to deal with Sebastian Shaw and Yashida Shiro. Zhang Xuan turned to look at everyone, smiled mysteriously, and then announced his idea. Using one's own weapon to attack another's shield, that's a good idea. Steve nodded in agreement, then continued, but how do we deal with Sebastian Shaw, if there's no energy to absorb? Sebastian Shaw is just a target. Zhang Xuan raised his head and said confidently, dealing with him is easy. Chapter 52 Sebastian Shaw. That day, Zhang Xuan stayed with the Howling Commandos and met the other members of the expanded Howling Commandos, Namer, who possessed immense speed and amphibious strength, and the android Torchman. The next morning, as daylight gradually brightened, Zhang Xuan eagerly led everyone out of the commando camp and onto the Arctic ice sheet. This cold, vast expanse was perfect for dealing with Sebastian Shaw. You guys get ready here first. I'll bring Sebastian Shaw back here, Zhang Xuan said, then vanished from the Arctic ice sheet in an instant. Looking at the spot where Zhang Xuan had vanished, Namer, wearing only his shorts, folded his arms and said impatiently, what's he doing? Leaving us here? And who gives us orders? Steve frowned slightly at this. Steve had always disliked Namer, hailing from the underwater kingdom of Atlantis. His temper, stubbornness, and brutality, coupled with his extreme hostility towards humans, made him deeply unpopular throughout the Howling Commandos. Because he founded the Howling Commandos, Logan, whose temper rivaled Namer's, immediately approached him, staring at him with a defiant expression. Because we all obey his orders, Steve included, Nick Fury glared at Namer with his single eye, raising his heavy machine gun slightly and pointing it at him. He threatened, don't try to provoke Alex, or you'll die miserably. Observing the tense crowd, Steve stepped forward with a soft shout, stop talking. Act now. Alex will be back soon. Sebastian Shaw was being very high profile, and Zhang Xuan easily tracked him down. Watching the figure displaying his might in the center of the battlefield, Zhang Xuan was filled with awe and envy. In fact, ever since discovering his cloning ability, Zhang Xuan had coveted Sebastian Shaw's abilities. It was one of his most desired abilities. After the gunfire and smoke subsided, the figure in the center of the battlefield finally revealed itself. Seeing Sebastian Zio's face, Zhang Xuan suddenly cried out in surprise, Noel. Although Noel looked much younger than 2 years ago, Zhang Xuan was certain it was Noel, the translator from Auschwitz who had accompanied him all the way to Finland. Filled with surprise, Zhang Xuan teleported directly to the figure and hesitantly called out, Sebastian Zio. Sebastian Zio turned his head, a smile breaking across his handsome face as he greeted him like an old friend. Hi, long time no see, Alex. Upon hearing Sebastian Zio's words, Zhang Xuan immediately confirmed that Noel was Sebastian Zio. Noel or Sebastian Zio, they will all be my prisoners today, Zhang Xuan snorted, casting aside all distractions. He swiftly attacked, decisively appearing beside Sebastian Zio and initiating teleportation, instantly appearing on the Arctic ice sheet with Sebastian Zio. Sebastian Zio quickly realized his predicament. He turned and glanced around, seeing no signs of alarm. He said calmly, what? You want to attack me? Come on, I'm waiting. Sebastian Zio's ability was to absorb energy, all forms of energy in motion, including electrical, kinetic, and thermal energy. This absorbed energy strengthened Zio's cells, granting him immense strength and eternal youth. When attacked by multiple enemies, the energy absorbed doubled, making him even more powerful. Therefore, he was utterly unafraid of being surrounded. Zhang Xuan was unaware of this, but he had a plan in mind. Everyone, attack together. Don't fight. Surround him. Without attacking, Sebastian Zhao wouldn't be able to absorb the energy. Without it, he would be nothing more than a strong, muscular individual. Sebastian Zhao's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. He quickly pulled out a grenade and ripped the ring off, attempting to absorb the energy. Zhang Xuan had been prepared for Sebastian Shaw's move. Upon seeing it, he immediately activated teleportation, appearing before Sebastian Shaw and absorbing the energy from the grenade explosion before he could absorb it. Upon contact with Sebastian Shaw, Zhang Xuan replicated his ability, now absorbing energy as well. Zhang Xuan's actions clearly exceeded Sebastian Shaw's expectations. He looked at Zhang Xuan in surprise. Isn't your ability to control a metal? I have many more. Zhang Xuan smiled mysteriously, offering no explanation. He wasn't foolish enough to share his secrets with Sebastian Shaw. Sebastian Shaw's expression suddenly changed, and he swiftly launched a punch at Logan, who had charged first. Thanks to the energy transformation, Sebastian Shaw's physical fitness was significantly stronger than that of an average man, and the punch was powerful. However, Logan, mindful of Zhang Xuan's words, didn't fight back or even dodge, taking the blow head-on. Logan's reaction once again surprised Sebastian Shaw. He had originally thought that if Logan counterattacked, he could use the momentum to absorb some of his energy. The more powerful Logan's counterattack, the more energy he would absorb. However, Sebastian Shaw was surprised to find that Logan didn't react at all. While Sebastian Shaw was stunned, Steve and the others had already surrounded him and quickly bound him hand and foot. Two specially designed cuffs bound Sebastian Shaw's hands and feet together, preventing him from moving. Is that it? The very young Fei Qi looked at the bound Sebastian Shaw with a look of surprise. In previous battles, the Howling Commandos had suffered many losses at the hands of Sebastian Shaw, leaving a deep impression on the young Fei Qi, but now, Sebastian Shaw, who Fei Qi considered so powerful, was easily defeated. Surprised, Fei Qi unconsciously turned his gaze to Zhang Xuan, his eyes filled with deep admiration. Zhang Xuan didn't notice the admiration in Fei Qi's eyes. Seeing Sebastian Zhao trapped, he hurried over and reached out to touch Sebastian Zhao several times, replicating to gain time. He couldn't help but fantasize, if only this replication could actually become a copy, how great would that be? I wouldn't have to replicate every time I used it. What a hassle. After replicating 3 times and gaining enough time, Zhang Xuan stood up, turned to Steve, and said with a smile, Steve, mission accomplished. I'll take you back. Zhang Xuan was about to initiate teleportation when a red shadow suddenly appeared and disappeared in an instant, along with Sebastian Zhao, who was lying on the ground. Teleport? Red Devil. P.S. Brothers and sisters, don't forget to vote for Scorpio after reading this. Chapter 53, One Against Thousands. The hazy nightscape of the Jiangnan water towns easily captivates, but the nights of Nanjing always leave one with a chilling, goosebump-inducing feeling, one unwilling to stay and eager to escape. News of the Ghost Army's confrontation with the Japanese Special Forces had spread throughout China, and many desired to witness the battle firsthand. However, under the bayonets of the Japanese invaders, Nanjing was now completely deserted, and the silence of the deserted city added a touch of desolation. Standing atop Nanjing's ancient city walls, which had stood for over 1,000 years, the chill evening breeze rustled Zhang Xuan's clothes, making him stand out against the quiet city. Is he Zhang Xuan? In a tea house in Nanjing, a young man sat upright on a long chair, his gaze piercing the deep darkness to the figures on the distant wall, a hint of disdain in his eyes. Beside the young man, a bald middle-aged man stood obediently to the side. Upon hearing the young man's words, he quickly replied, Master, here's Zhang Xuan. The young man frowned slightly, picked up a cup of tea, took a sip, and asked in surprise, Where are the Ghost Army? Master, I'm afraid he's coming alone. The bald middle-aged man explained quietly. Aside from Zhang Xuan, who has some ability, the others in the Ghost Army are just ordinary people. Their presence is useless, so, Zhang Xuan is actually a smart guy, the young man sneered, the mockery on his face deepening. At this moment, shadows appeared in Nanjing City. People kept jumping out of the darkness and gathered at the foot of the city wall in an instant. The first one to come was Yashida Shiro, the sunfire wearing the mask of the sun god. Yashida Shiro, His entire body ablaze, soared lightly, landing on the city wall. He sarcastically demanded, "Are you here to die? You're the one." Zhang Xuan snorted coldly, attacking without hesitation. Combined with the energy of the entire army's arsenal absorbed before his arrival, his attack was extraordinary. Sunfire, with immense experience in combat, reacted instantly, coalescing the flame swirling across his body into a flaming shield that blocked Zhang Xuan's incoming fist. Watching the flaming shield approach, Zhang Xuan made no attempt to dodge, his right fist instantly colliding with it. To Yasuda Shiro's surprise, the flaming shield failed to stop Zhang Xuan's attack. His fist, the size of a bowl, shattered it and landed on Yasuda Shiro's shoulder. The immense impact caused Yasuda Shiro to roar in relief, venting the excruciating pain. Absorbing Yasuda Shiro's flames, Zhang Xuan felt a sudden sense of fullness within him. Zhang Xuan knew this was the sign that his energy absorption had reached its peak. Before arriving, Zhang Xuan had absorbed the entire army's weaponry. Now, absorbing Yasuda Shiro's unparalleled flames, Zhang Xuan's energy was nearly saturated. He activated teleportation and instantly appeared beneath the city wall, amidst the Japanese mutant brigade. With a gentle stomp of his right foot, the immense energy within him radiated outward like a surging tide, then, under Zhang Xuan's control, gradually surged towards the surrounding Japanese mutants. Explosions and a flurry of shots followed, leaving a small number of the nearly 1,000 Japanese mutants crippled. The remainder suffered minor injuries, and one or two, unfortunate ones, perished outright. Seeing Zhang Xuan abandon him and attack his own men, Yasuda Shiro's fury intensified. He ignored the agreement and charged forward, his flames gradually shifting from orange to pale blue, a clear sign of their increased power. Zhang Xuan was not surprised but delighted when he saw Yasuda Shiro charging towards him. Though the previous attack had been powerful, it had also drained Zhang Xuan of all his energy. Just when he desperately needed energy, Yasuda Shiro arrived just in time. The violent collision of flame and flesh produced no sparks, no wail of pain, only a faint cry of surprise. "How come you're not hurt at all?" Zhang Xuan sneered. The energy within him transformed into a spear in his hand, piercing through the air with force. While Yasuda Shiro was surprised that Zhang Xuan was unharmed, his movements showed no sign of dissatisfaction. He had actually fought Zhang Xuan, a master of Logan's skills, to a draw. As Zhang Xuan and Yasuda Shiro engaged in a fierce battle, the surrounding Japanese mutants regained their composure and began to frantically unleash their attacks on Zhang Xuan, ranging from simple energy attacks to powerful physical strikes relying on speed. But without exception, Zhang Xuan blocked them all, miraculously absorbing all the energy. After absorbing so much energy, Zhang Xuan felt this sensation again. Teleportation instantly activated, and he vanished from his original position, reappearing before an exceptionally tall Japanese mutant. With a gentle tap of his index finger on his back, a massive amount of energy flowed through his finger into the mutant's body. With a bang, the massive mutant exploded, the immense energy ripping his body into pieces that scattered everywhere. In a distant tea house, a young man and a balding middle-aged man sat serenely on the fishing platform, leisurely watching the spectacle unfold. Seeing Zhang Xuan's successive powerful moves, his heart tightened for no reason. The mocking look on the young man's face gradually disappeared, replaced by a solemn expression. "So strong, young master, why don't we go back?" Seeing the powerful strength displayed by Zhang Xuan, the bald middle-aged man was a little worried. He turned to look at the young man and said cautiously, "Wait until young master's magical power is fully developed, then we will go out and kill him without a single piece of armor left." The young man quickly shook his head and said excitedly, "Wouldn't it be more fun this way? If I stay with those idiots all day, I'm afraid I will become an idiot too." "But, young master," the bald middle-aged man wanted to continue persuading, but was interrupted by the young man with a wave of his hand. "You stay here, I'll go meet them." No mistake. Under the ancient city wall, as Zhang Xuan continued to absorb and release energy, and with the help of the powerful teleportation ability of teleportation, Yasuda Shiro and his mutant brigade suffered heavy losses. There was obviously only one opponent, but up to now, the opponent seemed to be fine, and even his spirit was still in high spirits. But on the other hand, on his side, there were more than 200 mutants killed by Zhang Xuan alone, and none of the remaining people were in good condition, and all of them had injuries. Can you absorb energy? Yasuda Shiro was not stupid. After fighting for so long, he naturally discovered the abnormality of Zhang Xuan. Zhang Xuan chuckled, and suddenly a flame similar to that on Yashida Shiro emerged from his body. In the constant contact with Yashida Shiro, Zhang Xuan had already successfully copied his ability. Looking at Zhang Xuan, who had transformed into Sunfire again, Yashida Shiro was completely stunned and didn't know what to say. The young man who had just rushed over and was about to join the battle also stopped in his tracks and stood outside the battlefield with a look of shock on his face. P.S. Scorpio Weekly asks for recommendations and rewards. Chapter 54 Zhang Tong. Upon seeing the young man suddenly appear, Zhang Xuan and Yashida Shiro simultaneously stopped, stepping back a few steps, and watching him with a wary expression. Though young, the young man possessed an unparalleled strength that made him feel uneasy. Zhang Xuan's brows furrowed slightly, and he turned to look at the young man, a hint of nervousness on his face. If this young man was in league with the Japanese, Zhang Xuan would be in trouble. Despite his earlier dominance, Zhang Xuan was actually not in good shape. The hasty replication of two abilities had drained Zhang Xuan's energy, and his body seemed unable to withstand it. While Zhang Xuan was secretly nervous, Yashida Shiro rushed forward. Yashida Shiro was well aware of the principle of striking first. He didn't recognize this young man, so he couldn't be Japanese. If he wasn't a Japanese, then he was an enemy. However, Yashida Shiro had hit a wall this time. "You clown, go back to where you came from." The young man didn't make any move, just casually waved his hand, and Yashida Shiro's speeding body suddenly froze, and then flew backwards quickly, bumping into a dozen Japanese mutants before stopping. Seeing the young man's effortless method, Zhang Xuan couldn't help but shrink his eyes, his heart filled with horror. After copying two abilities, Zhang Xuan believed that he could completely defeat Yashida Shiro, but it was absolutely impossible for him to do it as easily as the young man. From this point of view, the young man's strength far exceeded his own. Fortunately, judging by the young man's voice just now, he should be Chinese. "My friend, your strength is so great, why don't we join forces?" After seeing the young man's strength, Zhang Xuan immediately wanted to win him over to help fight against the Japanese. Unfortunately, before Zhang Xuan could finish, the young man snorted coldly and declared with a haughty expression, "Who do you think you are? I could easily kill you. Go back to your America. You are not welcome in China." Zhang Xuan paused, staring blankly at the young man. He shouted angrily, "What do you mean? I told you to get out. Get out of China. Don't you understand?" The young man squinted at Zhang Xuan, his face as cold as ice, emotionless. Zhang Xuan's expression changed several times. He pointed at the young man and shouted, "I'm Chinese. What I do is none of your business." With that, Zhang Xuan activated his telepathic transmission, catching up with the fleeing Yashida Shiro. "You want to run? Not so easy." Zhang Xuan instantly appeared beside Yashida Shiro, and with a momentum, he delivered a fist wrapped in two fire dragons, swiftly landing on Yashida Shiro's chest. Yashida Shiro, preoccupied with his escape, was caught off guard and had no time to defend himself. The blows landed, and a mouthful of blood spurted out of his mouth, sending him flying several meters away. Seeing Zhang Xuan abandon him to go and cause trouble with the Japanese, the young man's face darkened. With a cold snort, he suddenly leaped up and charged forward. Zhang Xuan was about to seize the opportunity to pursue and capture Yashida Shiro in one fell swoop, but the young man suddenly charged from the side. With a flick of his hands, Zhang Xuan felt as if his body were restrained, and he watched Yashida Shiro flee in panic. Zhang Xuan roared, breaking free from the restraints and glaring at the young man. "What do you want? Get out of China immediately, or die." The young man's tone remained cold. "Psycho," Zhang Xuan cursed, abandoning the young man again and chasing after Yashida Shiro. Zhang Xuan was determined to eliminate Yashida Shiro today. Without him, his future plans would be impossible. Seeing Zhang Xuan abandon him once again, the young man's face darkened even further, and his calm eyes seemed to be blazing with fire. With telepathic transmission, catching up with Yashida Shiro was a piece of cake for Zhang Xuan. Easily catching up to Yashida Shiro, Zhang Xuan launched a fierce attack without hesitation, unleashing all the fighting techniques Logan had taught him. Without the sunfire he relied on, Yashida Shiro's strength collapsed. Whether it was physical fitness or his tactical skills, he was far inferior to Zhang Xuan. After fumbling through a few attacks, Yashida Shiro spat out several mouthfuls of blood, his face turning even paler. Seeing Yashida Shiro about to die, before Zhang Xuan could rejoice, the familiar restraint struck again. What the hell do you want to do? Zhang Xuan finally became angry after being repeatedly disrupted by the young man. Get out of China. The young man seemed to have only this sentence over and over again. Zhang Xuan couldn't help rolling his eyes and shouted impatiently, "What's the matter with you if I stay in China? You ruined my plan." The young man finally said the second sentence, "Since you are also Chinese, I let you leave." "Your plan?" Zhang Xuan asked back in surprise, turned his head and noticed that Yashida Shiro had escaped again, and hurriedly continued, "Wait until I kill him, then we'll talk about your plan." "You can't kill him." Zhang Xuan was about to chase Yashida Shiro, but the young man quickly stopped him and said, "He is mine, but now is not the time to kill him." "What do you mean?" Zhang Xuan stopped, turned to look at the young man, his eyes full of anger. "Do you know what he did last night? 1,000,000 soldiers died at his hands overnight." "I know." Without waiting for Zhang Xuan to finish, the young man nodded nonchalantly and said, "It's not enough. You can't kill him now." Zhang Xuan's face tightened, and he looked at the young man in front of him with suspicion. "Who are you?" From the young man's fragmentary words, Zhang Xuan vaguely sensed something. "Zhang Tong." Zhang Xuan looked at the young man with the same surname as himself with a strange expression, and asked in surprise, "What do you want to do?" "Unify the world," the young man said with a matter-of-fact expression, as if it were a very easy thing to do. Zhang Xuan snorted and sneered. "Does unifying the world mean watching the Japanese slaughter our compatriots? My greatness, you will never understand." The young man held his head high, with the pride of a man who controlled the world. Zhang Xuan shook his head and ignored Zhang Tong, thinking he was a madman. He turned and immediately chased after Yashida Shiro. In a moment, Yashida Shiro had disappeared. If it weren't for the bright flame in the night sky, Zhang Xuan really would have lost him. Watching Zhang Xuan vanish without a trace, Zhang Tong's face sank to shimmering pale. He turned to gaze at the receding flames in the distance and snorted coldly, "I'll teach you a lesson, Zhang Xuan." Teleportation wasn't easy to catch up with. Zhang Tong's first attempt was already his limit. This time, he gave up and turned back to Nanjing. There were still many Japanese mutants in Nanjing, and Zhang Tong was confident that Zhang Xuan would return. As soon as he caught up with Yashida Shiro, Zhang Xuan, fearing the strange Zhang Tong would reappear, attacked without mercy, launching a killing blow, targeting each of his vital points. In a matter of moments, Yashida Shiro was dead, the blazing flames extinguished like a snuffed candle. Carrying Yashida Shiro's body, Zhang Xuan returned to Nanjing. Seeing that familiar figure and the hushed Japanese mutants, Zhang Xuan frowned again. "P.S. Something happened, so I will only update once today and make up for it tomorrow. At the same time, I would like to thank classmate QL 785,464 for the reward. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55, Fierce Battle with Zhang Tong. "You killed him?" A stern look crossed Zhang Tong's face upon seeing Zhang Xuan return. Zhang Xuan ignored him, turning to look at the trembling Japanese mutants. His tone was slightly cold. "You want to protect them?" Zhang Tong's aqua-green robe fluttered slightly in the night breeze, a stern smile on his face. "I told you, now is not the time to kill them, Zhang Tong. Go home and dream." Zhang Xuan cursed, his body erupting in flames. He passed Zhang Tong, who stood in his way, and instantly appeared among the Japanese mutants. The raging flames quickly swept towards the frantic Japanese, threatening to engulf them all. "I told you, now is not the time to kill them," Zhang Tong snorted softly, stomping his right foot hard. Countless talismans suddenly appeared on the flat ground. The yellowed paper was covered with strange runes, seemingly Taoist runes. Zhang Xuan was puzzled, a sudden sense of alarm rising within him. Without thinking, he chose to teleport out of the way. Zhang Xuan's intuition proved to be incredibly accurate. As soon as he left, the talismans had already landed on 3 of the Japanese mutants. The 3 mutants, seemingly having seen better days, also tried to evade, but were a bit slow, and the talismans clung to them. Then, under Zhang Xuan's astonishment, the 3 mutants froze in place, motionless. "Something's amiss." Zhang Xuan's expression shifted, and a hint of alarm etched itself in his gaze towards Zhang Tong. "I just thought about it for a while, and I came up with a good idea, Zhang Tong. pleased with the effect of his spell, smiled and nodded, turning to look at Zhang Xuan, who was hiding in the distance. Zhang Xuan, you're a lot like me, talented and ambitious. Why don't we cooperate? Cooperate, Zhang Xuan sneered, pointing at the Japanese mutant who had just escaped death. Does cooperation mean keeping their lives and allowing them to continue to harm our compatriots? Zhang Xuan grew increasingly angry, finally pointing at Zhang Tong and cursing. You're so powerful, why didn't you stop the Japanese? Have you just watched them slaughter our compatriots for years? You're Chinese, too. You should understand the Chinese character. Zhang Tong gently lifted her long hair that fluttered off her shoulders, a hint of sarcasm on her face. If we don't let them see the Japanese's power and cruelty, will they stand up? Will they cooperate? Zhang Xuan was stunned by what he said. It was indeed as Zhang Tong said. If the Japanese hadn't invaded, China would still be plunged into war, and who knows how long the civil war would have lasted. But was this a reason for Zhang Tong to stand by and watch? They are all our compatriots. I can't watch them become pawns in your plan. In that case, the only option left for us is a fight. Zhang Tong casually raised his hand, a hint of resignation on his face. Zhang Xuan immediately tensed upon hearing this, his eyes fixed on Zhang Tong across from him. Facing Zhang Tong, Zhang Xuan had no confidence of victory, especially after witnessing his strange spell-casting skills. After a moment's standoff, Zhang Xuan, unable to bear the increasingly tense atmosphere, took the initiative. Unaware of Zhang Tong's abilities, Zhang Xuan chose not to engage in close combat. Flames ignited around him, and under his control, the flames transformed into a massive fire dragon, its fangs bared as it charged towards Zhang Tong. Hidden in the shadows, Zhang Xuan gently waved the dagger he had retrieved from Yashida Shiro, ready to strike at any moment. Watching the approaching fire dragon, a solemn expression crossed Zhang Tong's face. His 10 fingers twitched rapidly like phantoms, his lips moving as if chanting a spell. As the incantation echoed, yellow paper talismans, as if guided by their presence, flew out from beneath Zhang Tong's green robe, transforming into a massive yellow paper shield that blocked him. Now, Zhang Xuan's eyes flashed with a cold light. He suddenly vanished from his position, appearing behind Zhang Tong in an instant, his dagger swiftly wiping at the back of Zhang Tong's head. To Zhang Xuan's surprise, Zhang Tong, as if prescient, spun around with a faint smile on his face. You've been tricked. Before Zhang Xuan could react, a strange energy suddenly surged in from all sides, imprisoning him. Seeing this was a bad opportunity, Zhang Xuan immediately activated teleportation, but found it had failed, rendering him completely unable to move. This is a Taoist immobilization spell. Once you're immobilized, no matter how many tricks you use, you can't escape. Zhang Tong grinned triumphantly, as if he had won. Zhang Xuan snorted coldly, and flames erupted from his body. However, the flames didn't ignite, remaining firmly pinned to the surface of Zhang Xuan's skin, making him look as if he were covered in a layer of red paint. Don't even think about struggling, Zhang Tong chuckled, as if trying to persuade Zhang Xuan. I'll give you one more chance. Follow me, and I'll spare your life. Open it, Zhang Xuan suddenly shouted, his muscles exploding, stretching his clothes taut. The flames around him suddenly turned from red to purple, and a series of crackling sounds followed. How is that possible? Zhang Tong's face suddenly changed, and he quickly retreated, throwing out more than a dozen talismans in a row, as if trying to suppress Zhang Xuan's sudden outburst. Unfortunately, Zhang Tong failed. With this roar, the imprisoned Zhang Xuan suddenly relaxed. His delayed teleportation immediately activated, and he instantly caught up with the retreating Zhang Tong, his body ablaze with purple flames. Seeing Zhang Xuan free from the immobilization spell, Zhang Tong couldn't hide his surprise, but his hands moved with dissatisfaction. In an instant, a new spell was completed, Wind Rises. As Zhang Tong finished speaking, a violent gust of wind suddenly blew around him, transforming into a tornado. The fierce wind blew Zhang Xuan, who had just been teleported, away. You have wind, I have fire, let's see who's stronger. Zhang Xuan's eyes narrowed, and with a soft shout, flames rose from his body, forming a firestorm that was no less powerful than a tornado. The tornado and firestorm collided, unleashing an even more dazzling explosion. The scattered flames fell upon the nearby crowd of Japanese mutants, instantly reducing 2 weaker mutants to ash. Witnessing the force, the mutants exchanged glances, their eyes filled with a growing fear. They tried to flee, but Zhang Tong delivered another stern rebuke, forcing them to dodge desperately. Zhang Xuan and Zhang Tong, caught on the fray, paid no mind to their fate. The tornado and firestorm eventually overlapped, their momentum fueled by the wind, growing ever larger and more destructive. Nanjing's millennia-old walls gradually eroded, their stonework peeling away until they were completely reduced to ash. The fleeing Japanese mutants, now desperate for their lives, abandoned all else, desperately trying to save their own skins. Unfortunately, before they could even step foot outside, the tornado's sudden surge of flames swept them high into the air, reducing them to ash beneath the towering flames. P.S. Thanks to Defin Huang for the tip. Also, Scorpio is not in good shape today, so it may take until the second half of the night to make up for it. I will try to finish the second update before midnight. Chapter 56 Defeat Zhang Tong. Amidst the tornado of flames, Zhang Xuan and Zhang Tong stood facing each other, their expressions more serious than ever. After several exchanges, each had a rough understanding of the other's strength. With the abilities now on display, neither could defeat the other. If we keep fighting like this, neither will be in trouble. Zhang Xuan noted the destructive power of the tornado of flames. While he didn't mind the death of a few Japanese soldiers, he worried about the possibility of harming innocent people. Looking across at Zhang Tong, he suggested, "How about we have a showdown?" Transformed with super soldier serum and trained by Logan, Zhang Xuan was incredibly confident in his skills. Zhang Xuan was equally confident in his abilities, and Zhang Tong, equally confident in his own martial arts, agreed without hesitation. As he nodded, Zhang Tong began to remove his long robe piece by piece, revealing a bare back brimming with muscular strength. Taking a deep breath, Zhang Xuan's expression grew graver. Zhang Tong's muscular build rivaled his own, but he remained unsure of his actual martial arts skills. Without the two men's energy, the tornado of flames stopped expanding, though it wouldn't disappear for a while. Instead, they carved out a perfect arena for a fight. Amidst the swirling flames, a wide, open space, neither too large nor too small, was perfectly suited for the two men's battle. Winds howled, flames billowed. The two exchanged glances and moved simultaneously. With a simple clash of fists, they met. "Nice power," Zhang Tong chuckled, quickly withdrawing his fist. He swiftly raised one leg, sweeping it out like a falling leaf in the autumn wind, as if to sever Zhang Xuan's waist. After a single blow, Zhang Xuan knew he had met a formidable foe, one whose strength was only surpassed by his own. Seeing Zhang Tong's sweeping kick, Zhang Xuan neither dodged nor evaded, allowing it to strike him in the waist, seemingly intent on reciprocating his own injury. He then unleashed a double dragon out of the sea move, thrusting both fists forward to ram Zhang Tong's eye sockets. This move was Logan's ultimate tactic, no one could escape the fate of being blinded. While Zhang Xuan's attack wasn't as powerful as Logan's, it was still incredibly potent. Seeing Zhang Xuan not dodge or evade, Zhang Tong's face suddenly broke into a cold smile, and he instinctively shouted, "You're courting death." Zhang Tong had trained with a Chinese martial arts master since childhood, his skills surpassing his master's. The force of his kick could cleave even steel bars, let alone a human body. Something unbelievable happened to Zhang Tong. His kick had indeed struck Zhang Xuan's waist, but it seemed to miss the target, leaving him with no impact. Zhang Xuan ignored him, thrusting his fists forward, only half a meter away from Zhang Tong's eye sockets. Feeling the slashing force of the punch on his face, Zhang Tong was startled. He quickly recovered, tilting his head back, and narrowly dodged Zhang Xuan's blow. With a kick of his right foot, he pivoted, flipping sideways and taking several steps back. Zhang Tong steadied himself, his eyes blazing as he stared at Zhang Xuan, knowing he'd been tricked. His opponent showed no fear of his attacks, meaning he could only passively take the beating, his defeat inevitable. But Zhang Tong's pride disdained any argument, nor would he concede. Much less go back on his word and change the rules of the fight. Zhang Xuan knew he had a significant advantage. With his absorption ability, he was unfazed by any attack. The more he attacked, the stronger he became. Another brief standoff ensued, and Zhang Tong took the lead. His attacks, unlike those of a relentless tiger, were now more cunning, targeting Zhang Xuan's eyes and other vulnerable areas. Despite his absorption ability protecting him, Zhang Xuan instinctively dodged every time Zhang Tong's attack came his way. This gave Zhang Tong an opportunity to crush him. Helpless, Zhang Xuan could only dodge repeatedly, soon retreating to the edge of the tornado of flames. So close, he felt a faint burning sensation on his back. Zhang Tong pinned Zhang Xuan for a long time, but found he still had no way to defeat him. Attacking Zhang Xuan's weak spot still failed to harm him, leaving Zhang Tuang with a deep sense of defeat. He clearly outmatched his opponent, yet in the end, he was being worn down by his opponent. This was something the always proud Zhang Tuang could not endure. Thinking of this, Zhang Tuang stopped, unwilling to fight any further. Zhang Xuan looked at Zhang Tuang with surprise, a touch of wariness. After fighting for so long, Zhang Xuan knew he was no match for Zhang Tuang. The slightest movement from Zhang Tuang made Zhang Xuan nervous. After waiting for a long time, Zhang Tuang remained motionless. Zhang Xuan couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong with you?" Zhang Tuang had expected Zhang Xuan to seize the opportunity and strike back, but after waiting for so long, Zhang Xuan didn't move, and instead asked this question. How could Zhang Tuang respond? Should he surrender? Of course not. Zhang Tuang stared at Zhang Xuan for a moment, then said in a deep voice, "As long as I survive this time, I will return to seek revenge." With that, Zhang Tuang quickly retreated, diving headfirst into the raging tornado of flames, unprotected. Without the energy to sustain it, the tornado's flames were no longer as formidable as before, but their destructive power remained undiminished. Zhang Tuang's unprepared charge was practically a death wish. Zhang Xuan was stunned, a moment before he recovered. He unleashed his absorption ability to its full potential, absorbing the entire tornado's flames. The immense energy surged through Zhang Xuan's body, and he felt as if his body was about to explode. Without even a glance to see if Zhang Tuang was alive or dead, Zhang Xuan swiftly activated teleportation and instantly appeared in the northeast, home to the largest Japanese military base in China. Upon landing, Zhang Xuan unleashed the raging energy within him without hesitation. The raging energy swept across the area, and explosions echoed one after another. Tanks, armored vehicles, artillery, and everything else detonated in quick succession, instantly reducing the vast majority of the Japanese in the base to ash. A few lucky survivors spotted Zhang Xuan and opened fire without hesitation. But the bullets could not hurt Zhang Xuan, they only increased his energy, and the increased energy in turn killed them. In just a moment, the military base was destroyed by Zhang Xuan alone, and it was razed to the ground in an instant, leaving no one alive. After wiping out one base, Zhang Xuan did not stop there, and continued to shuttle through various military towns in the northeast. The Japanese troops were eliminated in an organized manner. Some died under their own bullets, some died in the explosion of the gunpowder magazine, and some died under Zhang Xuan's flames. In the second half of the night, when the sky was about to break, the entire northeast was full of flames, and all the devils went to hell. The entanglement between Nanjing City and Zhang Tuang lasted too long, and now Zhang Xuan had little time left. After solving the problem of the Japanese army in the northeast, Zhang Xuan did not look for trouble with the Japanese army in central China, and came to the Japanese mainland alone. Zhang Xuan wanted to end this shameful war here. P.S. My condition is really bad, and the writing of these 2 chapters today is not good. Scorpio will adjust as soon as possible. Chapter 57 The Corrupted Battle. Zhang Xuan returned to the familiar Howling Commandos camp and was surprised to find it completely deserted. He searched the entire camp, but couldn't find even Carter. Did they all go on a mission? Filled with surprise, Zhang Xuan returned to Howard's lab. The lab seemed several times larger than before, cluttered with instruments and crowded with people, most of whom Zhang Xuan didn't recognize. Finally navigating a scientist he'd only met briefly, Zhang Xuan asked, "Where's Howard?" "Hi, Alex, you're finally back." The bespectacled scientist looked up at Zhang Xuan for a moment before recognizing him. A smile crossed his wrinkled face. "Command, they're all at headquarters, thank you." Alex thanked him, but instead of rushing to headquarters, he returned to camp to await their return. They waited until dusk, when Steve and the others finally emerged, exhausted. Seeing Alex, Steve couldn't help but smile. "Alex, you're back." His words were filled with deep joy. Alex looked at Steve and nodded emphatically. He reached out and gently patted Steve's shoulder, a relaxed smile on his face. "Yeah, you're back. Good to be back, good to be back." Steve repeated this twice, eager to pass the heavy burden on to Alex. "From now on, you'll be the captain. The captaincy is yours. No one can change that." Alex saw that Steve was truly tired and whispered soothingly, "We're brothers. I'll always stand behind you and support you, Alex. It's great to have you back." Carter's face was particularly tired, his once radiant skin dulled. "We really need you. I guess it doesn't matter whether he's here or not." Carter had barely finished speaking when a thorny figure jumped out, a defiant look on his face. Namer. Alex turned his head and the name popped into his mind. Previously, because his mind was focused on China, Alex had ignored this person who had repeatedly provoked him. But now, that was no longer possible. Alex had to return to the Howling Commandos and establish some authority. Alex squinted at Namer with disdain, his tone frivolous. "Are you the Merman King, Namer?" Alex's dismissive gaze and flippant tone infuriated the troublemaker. Without a word, Namer charged forward, unhesitatingly striking Alex with both fists. "Is that all you can do?" Alex didn't dodge, his expression growing even more disdainful as Namer's fists approached. Too weak, Namer's expression shifted. He was well aware of his own strength, and the fact that Alex could take his punches unscathed filled him with a chill. Alex's cloning abilities were known only to Steve and a few of the original Howling Commandos. Later members of the Howling Commandos, like Namer and Torch, were unaware. While the cockpit absorption and solar fire's power were still there, Alex attacked boldly. "I'll show you how powerful I am." A burst of purple-red flames erupted, quickly enveloping Namer before he could react, but without harming him. Namer was terrified. Although the purple-red flames didn't burn him, the intense intensity made him almost breathless, and the burning pain made him want to scream. "This is just a lesson. Don't try to provoke me again." Alex, knowing when to stop, retracted the flames. He glared at the slightly dazed Namer with a cold gaze, then turned to Steve and asked with a hint of confusion, "Did something happen when you went to the command post today?" Steve and the others exchanged glances, sighing in unison, their faces dejected. The balance of war has seriously tilted. Our chances of victory are dwindling. What happened? Alex looked at everyone in surprise, a sense of foreboding rising in his heart. They were all battle-hardened warriors, rarely displaying such pessimism. Yet, they were all acting this way at this moment, clearly indicating the situation had deteriorated beyond repair. The Hellfire Club has fully intervened in the war, and more mutants are appearing on the battlefield. Most of them are level 3 and 4 mutants, extremely powerful and capable. Carter, the one who knew the battle best, explained with a wry smile. "In just 2 days, 100,000 Allied troops have perished, and the front lines are in tatters. Our margin of maneuver is shrinking." Alex had been in China for 2 days, all yesterday and one night, plus today. He had no idea what had transpired during those 2 days and one night. Hearing Carter's words, he expressed a look of disbelief. When had Sebastian Shaw become the boss of the Hellfire Club again? After Shaw was rescued, he soon reappeared on the battlefield with the more powerful mutants. Steve knew what Alex was about to ask, and before he could, he explained, "He easily defeated us, and 100,000 Allied forces were wiped out." "It really is Sebastian Shaw?" Alex's face turned strange. Sebastian Shaw's participation in the war wasn't just his personal behavior, and had nothing to do with the Hellfire Club? What was going on now? Had Strucker lied to him? With that teleporting Red Devil here, he's become even more difficult to deal with. "We don't have any way to deal with him," Logan nodded, his face filled with impatience. "It's frustrating to be unable to hide him, and we can't catch him either." "It's so frustrating." Putting aside his plan to immediately look for Strucker, Alex quickly got into the mood. His face straightened slightly, and he asked seriously, "Did the big guys at command say anything?" "In view of the strength of mutants, the Allies are preparing to recruit more superpowered people, mainly mutants, to form a new team specifically to deal with the mutants of the Hellfire Club," Carter repeated expressionlessly, his voice even more monotonous. "This is an order from command, and it's the most effective solution we have come up with so far, no mistake. Using mutants to fight mutants is indeed a good idea, but the Hellfire Club is a veteran mutant force with countless mutants under its command, and some of them are as powerful as legends. Using mutants to fight them, as far as Alex was concerned, had a very low success rate and could easily allow the Hellfire Club to take advantage, which would only lead to even greater trouble." Steve and the others who knew Alex well noticed something was amiss. They looked at Alex in surprise and asked, "Alex, you don't think this plan is a good idea, not to mention whether we can recruit more mutants? Even if we do, how long will it take them to adapt to the war?" Alex shook his head, saying bitterly, "Time is on Mustache's side now. We can't afford to wait." Steve understood the same logic, but he couldn't think of any other viable solutions. Seeing Alex's expression, he immediately became excited. He pulled Alex aside and asked excitedly, "Alex, do you have a better idea?" Alex shook his head. "What can I do?" "Let's meet them first," P.S. Both chapters have been uploaded together, don't miss it. P.S. The trip to China is almost over. Many readers in the book review section were very confused by this part, thinking Scorpio was just venting for the sake of letting off steam. To be honest, this paragraph is not well written by Scorpio. Many things that he wanted to express were not expressed accurately, which Scorpio feels very regretful about. But fortunately, a few pitfalls were buried, and the results will be revealed in the future. Chapter 58 New Teammates. Alex's plan to meet Hellfire was ultimately dashed, as a new group of superpowered individuals would be joining the Howling Commandos in 2 days. To await these new recruits, Alex had to postpone his plans. He decided to take advantage of this break to get acquainted with the new recruits, Speed, Torch, and Namor. Their previous hurried arrivals hadn't allowed them time to properly get to know each other. The next morning, before daybreak, Alex was awakened by the roar of engines. He leaped from his bed, stunned for a moment before realizing, it's an airplane. The Nationalist Army had no airplanes in China, and the Japanese completely controlled the airspace and rarely used them. The roar of an airplane hadn't been heard in months, and Alex didn't initially react. Alex quickly packed up and left the room. In the campground, Steve and Nick Fury were training. Logan leaned against the wall, basking in the sun, a cigar in his mouth, and Natasha, the Black Lady, dozed on a recliner. The three newcomers stood in a corner, seemingly bored. Seeing Alex approach, the four of them turned to greet him, their manners very cordial. Seeing this, Speedy and Torchman smiled and nodded in response, but Namor snorted and turned away. Alex returned the greeting with a smile, taking the opportunity to carefully examine the three new members. Speedy was a young man, his youthful face full of vigor, his bright eyes gleaming with a passion for adventure. Torchman was a bit older, reminiscent of the uncles often seen in future Korean dramas, with a weathered face, a wiry beard, and deep, calm eyes that seemed to hold countless stories. Namor, clad only in a pair of scaly shorts, left Alex with a bare back. After observing for a moment, Alex was about to step forward to greet them when another roar echoed from the sky, jarring his ears. Again, Natasha's beautiful eyebrows furrowed, and she looked up at the planes flying overhead, saying impatiently, 10 or 20 flights a day, that's a lot of fuel. The others remained calm, their expressions faltering slightly before quickly returning to normal. I'll take care of them, Alex chuckled and vanished in an instant. Seeing Alex vanish, Nick paused, his mouth wide open, his white teeth bared, and he excitedly exclaimed, Alex is the best. He should have taken those damn planes down long ago. Hearing Nick's words, Fichi and the other two were awe-stunned. They looked up at the sky. Suddenly, a plane lost control, staggering like a drunk, and plummeted headfirst into the air. Then, the second, the third, the fourth, and finally, the sky was completely clear of planes. Fichi looked at Nick excitedly, his voice tinged with envy. This is, Fichi paused, unsure how to address Alex. Calling him by his name wouldn't be easy, but calling him Captain was right there with Steve. Nick's face jiggled lightly as he smiled and said, yes, that's what Alex did. Isn't it exciting? Fichi simply nodded, his face flushed with excitement. As he spoke, Alex returned with a faint smile. He looked at Fichi and introduced himself. Let me introduce myself formally. I'm Alex Zhang. You can call me Alex, or you can call me Phantom. Actually, Phantom had rarely been used since it was given to him. Most people preferred to call him by his name. Fichi suddenly screamed and broke into a run around the camp, so fast that only a series of shadows could be seen. After running 3 laps, Fichi sprinted back, standing 3 steps in front of Alex. He said solemnly, I'm Fichi, and my name is Balzac. Hello, Bal. After acquainting himself with Fichi, Alex approached the Torchman again. The Torchman glanced at Alex indifferently, then turned his head to look into the distance, as if he didn't take Alex seriously. A cold voice followed, Torchman. Alex looked at the uncle in front of him with some surprise, and couldn't help but say in his heart, is this the Torchman or the Iceman? It's so cold. The uncle had a cold temper. Alex turned away tactfully without looking for Namor. He walked straight to Natasha and sat on another lounge chair. He pointed at the 3 people covertly and asked in a low voice, what do you think of these 3? Natasha raised the corner of her mouth slightly and whispered, Speedy, you hero-worshipping brat, joined the army just for Steve, but now I'm afraid you have to join. You are not bad, either. You just saw it, you are very fast. Thinking of Speedy's performance just now, Alex couldn't help but chuckle. and pointed at the torch man. "Where's that uncle, uncle?" Natasha was stunned when she heard it, and then she smiled. "That's a good title, it suits him very well." Alex glared at Natasha and chastised her with a stern face. Seriously, unfortunately, Alex's lecture had no effect. They'd been together for so long, and everyone knew their personalities. Natasha wasn't afraid of Alex. After laughing for a moment, Natasha finally stopped and spoke slowly. "Torchman is an artificial being. He bursts into flames the moment he comes into contact with oxygen, and everything he touches will also burst into flames." Alex looked surprised, seemingly unconvinced. Wasn't the old man fine? Howard built him a suit to block out the oxygen. Natasha rolled her eyes and continued, "He'd been sealed in concrete for a while, and was recently released because they were short on manpower, so he's a bit cold." "What about him?" Alex nodded, glancing at Namer, who had been keeping his back to him. Natasha's face immediately became disdainful. She snorted and said slowly, "This guy came uninvited. I heard that he destroyed several submarines. His ability is average, but his temper is not small. Anyway, you have seen it all." "Okay, I have seen it before." Alex thought of the previous meetings and smiled strangely. He then asked, "Do you know the new group of people? You should ask Carter." "She knows." Natasha shook her head and pointed at Carter, who was trotting in from outside the camp. "She took over this group of people. She knows it best." As soon as Carter walked in, he shouted, "Steve, something happened." "What's wrong?" Steve put the flying shield on his arm, turned to look at Carter, with a puzzled look on his face. "The new group of people were kidnapped." Carter took a deep breath and said hurriedly, "It was done by the Hellfire Club." "When did it happen?" Alex appeared beside Carter in an instant and asked repeatedly, "Where?" Seeing Alex, Carter breathed a sigh of relief and quickly replied, "Just now. The exact location is unknown. They were kidnapped on the ship coming to the UK. Guys, get ready to go. P.S. Fei Kai's name can't be found. Scorpio can only make one up by himself. If anyone knows it, please tell Scorpio." Chapter 59 Hellfire. Without wasting a moment, Alex, embracing everyone, vanished from the camp. He reappeared in Berlin, nestled within a tower. The streets below were filled with a frenzied, waving crowd, their shouts audible from afar. "We're in Berlin." Fei Chi peeked at Alex, his face filled with surprise and confusion. "Weren't we supposed to be rescuing people? Why were we in the enemy's lair?" Alex, not wanting to explain himself to Fei Chi, cautiously poked his head outside. Teams of soldiers were slowly approaching from the streets. Hitler, sporting a signature mustache, stood in an armored vehicle, smiling and waving at the crowds on both sides. "I won the jackpot today, and Mustache is out parading." Alex chuckled and turned to look at the Torchman beside him. "Torchman, go out and scare them." Fearing Torchman might misunderstand his intentions, Alex emphasized, "Just scare them, don't actually kill Mustache. The Japanese aren't the Japanese, and Mustache isn't the Japanese emperor. Killing or threatening them won't work on them. Only by defeating them at their root can they truly be eliminated." Torchman nodded, his shoulders trembling slightly. Flames erupted from his body, and he flew out of the tower, hurtling like a rocket towards Mustache in the armored vehicle. Mustache's guards were also exceptional. They immediately spotted the Torchman charging towards them, signaling him to get into the armored vehicle while launching a swift counterattack. Keeping Alex's words in mind, Torchman circled in the air a few times, killing several Japanese soldiers, then turned and returned to the tower, resuming his aloof, unassuming demeanor. Alex patted Torchman's shoulder excitedly and said approvingly, "Torchman, well done." Torchman didn't react, his expression still impassive. Namer, however, was annoyed and said with a hint of jealousy, "I can do this little thing." Unfortunately, no one paid any attention. "What do we do next?" "Charge out." Speed jumped excitedly, as if ready to burst into battle. Alex looked at the chaotic crowd outside, smiled slightly, and said slowly, "Do nothing." Wait. Namer jumped out again, making his presence felt, and looked at Alex with an unpleasant expression. "You're wasting your time. You're going to get them all killed." Natasha folded her arms, glanced at Namer, and snorted, "If you're stupid, don't show off. You'll make a fool of yourself." "What did you say?" Namer pointed at Natasha and roared angrily, as if someone had stepped on his tail. Steve sighed, raised his shield, and placed himself between the two men. He turned to look at Namer and asked, "Do you know where they were taken?" Namer paused, his neck erect, and argued, "I don't know, but we can go find them." It's better than waiting here. Do you know why Alex sent the torchman out to scare the mustache? Nick raised his heavy machine gun and said with disdain, if you don't understand, don't talk nonsense. Just stay still. Namor was a little unconvinced and pointed at Nick, wanting to speak again, but Steve spoke first. If the mustache is scared, he will definitely call Zio and the others back. This way, we won't have to go through the trouble of looking for them. Namor was completely speechless this time, blushing and walking aside, looking embarrassed. Alex remained silent throughout the whole process. He wanted to wear Namor down until the rebelliousness in him was completely eliminated, so that he could become a good and trustworthy teammate. After a while, Natasha, who had been secretly observing the situation outside, suddenly spoke out. They appeared. Zio and the Red Devil are missing. The Rapids are not seen. Alex then remembered that he had forgotten to ask a crucial question. By the way, who are the people around Zio now? What are their abilities? Natasha turned her head to look at Alex, pondered for a moment and said roughly, there are 7 more than before. Their levels are around level 2 or 3, and their abilities are varied. You will know when the time comes. Alex smiled bitterly when he heard this, nodded helplessly and said, okay, let's go meet them. It's you, Alex. Seeing Alex coming out of the tower, Sebastian Zio couldn't help but reveal a strange smile on his face, with a hint of pride in his eyes. Alex looked past Zio and fixed his gaze on the Red Devil behind him. You were the one who rescued him last time? But you won't be so lucky this time. The Red Devil looked at Alex expressionlessly and said in a low voice, you can try. Seeing that Alex ignored him, Zio smiled instead. Are you here to rescue those little guys? Come on, we're waiting for you. As soon as he finished speaking, the Red Devil put a hand on Zio's shoulder. A light red mist drifted past, and the two disappeared. What do we do now? Fei Chi looked at Alex with some concern. Zio had clearly set a trap. They've invited me to their door, how can I refuse them? Alex was not afraid at all. He wrapped everyone around him and followed the Red Devil, who had deliberately left a trail of movement. While chasing, Alex looked at Natasha and asked, Natasha, while you have time, tell me briefly about those mutants, the people from the Hellfire Club. No mistake, just go to the 16:9 book bar for the content. I won't say much about Zio and the Red Devil. Let's talk about Riptide first, the one who can create tornadoes. He once destroyed the Allied naval fleet in a previous battle. Natasha thought for a moment and added, recently we discovered that he can also create a calcified substance, which is launched with a whirlwind and is as powerful as a missile. Earthquake Woman, a woman with a strange appearance, can cause earthquakes and produce extremely destructive shock waves. Many allies have died at her hands. Fire Fist, his hands can emit extremely hot flames. He is not weak in skills and is a formidable opponent. Ironhide, his skin is as hard as iron. He possesses super strength and super endurance, and is very difficult to deal with. After introducing 6 people in a row, Natasha paused and continued, the last one is a child. Don't underestimate him just because he is a child, otherwise you will suffer. Alex was stunned when he heard this, and said in some surprise, why is there a child? This kid can control metal. Any metal, from Steve's shield to Nick's gun. Natasha looked at Alex sternly and said solemnly, we've suffered a lot at his hands before. You should be careful. A kid who controls metal? Could it be Marx? Hearing Natasha's words, Alex couldn't help but imagine the image of a young Magneto. P.S. After reading the comments, Scorpio is a little angry. Some people criticize without even reading the book carefully. Scorpio is speechless. Regarding a certain comment, Scorpio would like to clarify that Scorpio is writing about Marvel. Marvel began with World War II. So it's normal to write about World War II. There's nothing wrong with writing about the anti-Japanese war. As for the character Zhang Tong, his name wasn't chosen randomly. Scorpio can only laugh at this student's fantasy. Scorpio would like to solemnly state that, except for the protagonist, all other characters in the book have already appeared in Marvel, excluding Hollywood figures. Who is Zhang Tong? Take a guess, everyone. It's actually very easy. Chapter 60 The So-Called Trap. After chasing the Red Devil for over half an hour, Alex felt like he'd circled the earth several times. Yet, the Red Devil ahead of him never stopped. He wondered what his plan was. Is this a diversion? Alex thought, a sudden sense of foreboding. Was the Hellfire planning a decapitation attack? The Allies were no match for the enemy. The loss of their leader would undoubtedly cause morale, which would be a problem. The more he thought about it, the more plausible it seemed. Alex immediately led everyone back to camp. Seeing the unchanged camp and the bustling headquarters nearby, Alex felt a sense of confusion. Seeing no one speaking, Fei Chi couldn't help but speak up again, asking, "Why are you back so suddenly? Aren't you going to keep chasing?" Alex remained silent, gathering everyone and returning to where they had left off. The Red Devil, perched on the icy plains below, seemed to be waiting for them. "Zio, what are you planning?" Alex, appearing in front of the Red Devil, frowned slightly and asked bluntly. "Just use whatever tricks you have. No need to beat around the bush and waste time. I have to say, your teleportation is quite impressive, seemingly even better than the Red Devil's." Zio clasped his hands over his chest, a faint smile on his slightly pale face. "Red Skull captured you, but unfortunately, he couldn't keep you captive, and you ended up being mutilated." The more Alex listened, the more he felt something was amiss, and he grew wary. "To prevent you from escaping, I've prepared something." Zio's smile widened. He finished his sentence and suddenly shouted, "Eric!" Hearing the name, Alex froze. When he came to his senses, he found himself trapped in a strange iron cage. The iron bars were arm-thick, and through the less than 1 centimeter gaps, a blue electric current continuously emanated. Alex attempted teleportation without any delay, clearly demonstrating that the cage Shaw had specially prepared had no effect on him. Steve, believing Shaw's words, looked at Alex with concern. "Alex, what do we do now? This thing can't stop me." Alex chuckled, shook his head, and whispered, "Let's use their own tricks against them and give them a try." At Alex's words, the weight of worry in everyone's chests shattered, and a sly grin spread across their faces. "Eric, kill them!" Shaw's voice echoed again, as if commanding someone. Peering through the crack in the cage, Alex saw a child emerge, lifting a white sheet. Several others followed him, likely mutants from the Hellfire Club. Alex glanced briefly at the people behind him, his gaze fixed on the child in front. He looked about 10 years old, neither tall nor short, with neatly cropped black hair that made him look energetic, but his pale blue eyes were as cold as ice. Although they hadn't seen each other for over 2 years, the moment Alex laid eyes on the child, he knew for sure it was Max. Recognizing Max, Alex didn't immediately acknowledge him. He wouldn't even spare the child. Alex was determined to teach Zio a lesson. As his thoughts raced, the custom-made cage slowly shrank, seemingly ready to crush Alex and the others into pulp. Alex gave everyone a reassuring look, then suddenly opened his mouth and screamed in agony at the top of his lungs, motioning for the others to join him, occasionally begging for mercy, a truly joyful gesture. Everyone looked at each other in embarrassment, then joined in the screaming. A chorus of wolf-like howls echoing across the vast icy plain. "We should go." As the cage shrank, Alex sent the others back with him and secretly brought in several more buckets of dog blood. "I'll kill you all." After everything was done, Alex lurked in the shadows, quietly waiting. Blood spilled out, and Zio's face lit up with ecstasy. "Ha ha ha, that's mine." A moment later, the cage practically crushed into a discus, before Zio reached out to stop Eric. "All right, open it, now." Alex's eyes flashed, and he instantly returned to the camp, leading everyone back. Seizing the moment the cage reopened, he shouted, "Kill!" Armed with shields, heavy machine guns, and energy lances, Torch, Speed, and Namor rushed out, attacking the mutants of the Hellfire Club. Zio, who could absorb energy, had been excluded from Alex's attack from the outset. The sudden attack caught them off guard, and they were immediately devastated, their numbers reduced to 5. Zio was unattacked, and Red Devil teleported out of the way. Riptide reacted quickly, and Tornado appeared just in time to block the attack. Ironhide, thanks to his iron armor, had survived, but his condition was grave, covered in blood. Wielding his flaming hands, Fire Fist unexpectedly survived. Everything happened in an instant, and by the time Zio realized what was happening, the smile on his face had barely faded. "Kill him!" Zio's face livid, and with a wave of his hands, he charged forward. Alex snorted coldly and charged at Zio, believing he was the best person to deal with him. Having copied Zio's abilities, Alex would be safe from Zio's attacks, and the battle between the two was bound to be a protracted battle. Torchman and Namor joined forces to attack Fire Fist, one wielding fire, the other water, neither fearing Fire Fist. Without his Fire Fist's strength plummeted several times, and he gradually began to lose strength under the siege of Torchman and Namor. Nick faced Ironhide alone, but the severely injured Ironhide was no match for Nick. After a few shots, Ironhide's strength completely collapsed, and he would soon be reduced to a corpse. Check out the complete content of the 16-9 book forum. Riptide proved difficult to deal with, so the two strongest players on the team, Steve and Logan, joined forces to confront him. With their shields and exceptional self-healing abilities, they could confidently fight Riptide without fear of his unleashed missiles. Natasha stood quietly, her eyes darting around. Suddenly, she dodged the sudden appearance of the Red Devil with a swaying swing of her waist. With a slight jolt of her hands, a powerful electric current instantly struck the Red Devil, sending him shuddering. Feichi also appeared immediately, slashing at the Red Devil's waist. Seeing his side at a disadvantage, Zio grew agitated, his men's movements becoming disorganized. Alex seized the opportunity to deliver a few vicious blows, leaving him with several wounds. Barely avoiding a dagger thrust towards his heart, Zio demanded sharply, "Where's Eric?" Just then, Zio had searched for Eric but couldn't find him. "Sorry, I sent him away." Alex's face darkened, and he glared at Zio coldly. "Knowing my relationship with Max, you still dare to go after him? You're courting death." As he spoke, Alex suddenly vanished, reappearing beside Riptide, who was locked in a fierce battle with Steve and Logan. A streak of blood streaked across his face, and the rapidly spinning tornado suddenly stopped. Riptide lay on the ground, clutching his neck, a look of terror on his face. Zio's face suddenly changed, and he glared at Alex fiercely, shouting, "Let's go!" Upon receiving Zio's order, the Red Devil immediately abandoned Natasha and, in a flash, pulled the Hellfire Club along with him, vanishing in an instant. Looking at the immediately quiet ice field, Feichi was stunned. "What do we do now? Go home?" P.S. After reading the book reviews, I see there are quite a few smart people. Zhang Tong is the Mandarin. As for why he chose this name, it's because among the many aliases of the Mandarin, this one, Zhang Tong, best suits him. Chapter 61 Eric. Go home? What about them? Namor jumped out again. Already furious at Fire Fist's last-minute rescue, he couldn't contain himself anymore, and after hearing Alex's irresponsible words, he couldn't hold back anymore. He lashed out, "You selfish coward, calm down, think about it, figure it out, and go back." Alex glanced at Namor calmly, leaving him behind and immediately returning to the Howling Commandos camp. Looking at the empty surroundings, Namor's face flushed a dark red, even redder than the glaring blood on the snow. "Alex, just wait." In the camp, Steve looked at Alex hesitantly. Just as he was about to speak, Alex raised his hand to stop him. "Steve, that's not how you lead a team. Overly forgiving will only lead to further disunity. Some people need to be disciplined." With that, Alex abandoned the others and headed straight for his room. Meanwhile, in a luxurious apartment in Germany, the Red Devil leaped out of thin air, accompanied by several others. Putting down the dying iron sheet in his hand, the Red Devil turned to look at Zio and said slowly with a cold face, "Zio, this time the loss is huge. You have to find a way to explain to the king. As long as we get the things, the king will never blame us." Zio clenched his fists and said smugly, "The people have already entered. Next, we just wait for good news." At the Howling Commandos camp, watching Alex disappear at the door, Feichi turned to Steve and the others around him with a confused look on his face. "What are we doing now?" "Rest." Nick swung the heavy machine gun in his hand and carried it to his room. Logan and Natasha turned and left without saying anything, leaving Steve in a daze and Feichi completely bewildered. Returning to the room, Alex saw Max sitting obediently on the bed. A gentle smile immediately crossed his face. He quickly walked over to sit beside Max and said, "Maximum." He had barely uttered a name when he was interrupted by the child beside him. A cold, emotionless voice said, "I'm Eric now." "Eric Lancher." Alex was slightly taken aback and immediately changed his tone. "Eric, how did you end up with Sebastian Shaw?" Alex didn't know why Eric had changed his name, but it certainly didn't look like a pleasant experience, so Alex tactfully didn't ask. "He saved me, and I followed him." Eric turned to look at Alex, a hint of light brightening his thin, cold face. "Just like you saved me back then, Eric, I didn't mean to leave you." Eric's voice was calm, but Alex was keenly aware of the resentment in his tone and quickly explained, "I looked for you once, but unfortunately, you're gone." Eric stared at Alex for a long moment, his eyes as indifferent as if he were looking at a cloud of air. Alex couldn't bear the gaze and looked away, filled with guilt. The silence lasted for a long time until Eric's voice rang out again. "He's dead." "What?" "Alex, lost in thought, stared at Eric in surprise. Jacob Eisenhart, my father. Eric's voice remained calm, almost childlike. He didn't die at the hands of a thief, but it. Alex froze. He remembered what the new tenant had said to him when he'd first approached Eric, and tears suddenly flowed uncontrollably. He hugged Eric tightly, muttering, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. At that moment, Alex could only use these words to express his guilt. Eric's expression finally faltered. He lowered his eyes slightly, watching Alex's twitching body, tears streaming down his face. After a long moment, both of them stopped crying. What happened? Tell me, Eric, Alex asked in a low voice, gripping Eric's shoulders tightly with both hands. Eric looked up at Alex, a slight hesitation. Max, tell me what happened. After leaving London, my father brought me to a quiet village, Eric began, a gentle smile on his face. We decided to settle down here. They were very friendly, and we lived happily for over a month. Suddenly, Eric's face turned grim, and his tone was filled with anger. One day, they discovered my secret. They thought I was a witch, and they wanted to burn me to death. Alex listened quietly, his mind unconsciously thinking of his own mother, trying to comfort a mother he had never met. She had suffered a similar fate to Eric, but fortunately, she was only driven out of Chinatown, while Eric was threatened with being burned to death. We escaped, but they wouldn't let us go. Eric's expression returned to its indifference. My father died saving me. Then, he showed up, saved me, and took me away. Alex fell into a long silence. He knew the world's enduring prejudice against mutants, a phenomenon that shaped the future, like Professor X, the moderate who advocated peaceful coexistence with humans, and the radical Magneto, who advocated for the extermination of humans and the establishment of a mutant order. But these were only movies. Alex had never truly understood or felt this discrimination. Even his mother's plight hadn't made him face it. But now, Eric's story had truly moved Alex. He realized humanity's attitude toward mutants had become so radical, to the point of killing people. Suddenly, Alex realized he had another responsibility on his shoulders, and he wanted to change something. Reaching out to hold Eric's shoulder, Alex whispered, Eric, follow me. Everything will be fine. It all started with Magneto. Eric remained silent, looking up at Alex, his cold, icy eyes fluttering slightly. I promise, everything will be fine, Alex vowed solemnly. No mutant will be bullied anymore. Eric lowered his eyes and whispered, this is his plan. He deliberately wanted me to be brought back by you. What? Alex was stunned. He's looking for something with you. Eric's speech quickened, his expression growing anxious. He wanted me to feign obedience and join you, so he could kill you and take the thing back. What? Alex stared at Eric in astonishment, a cold sweat breaking out in his heart. Fortunately, he had influenced Eric, otherwise the consequences would have been disastrous. The cosmic cube. What? Alex suddenly jumped up from the bed, a look of disbelief. P.S. Scorpio is being cute. Please like, recommend, and reward me. Kisses. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62, Taking Advantage of the Situation. How could they know? Alex was puzzled and looked at Eric in surprise. Suddenly, an idea popped up in Alex's mind. Maybe we can take this opportunity to catch them all in one fell swoop. The more Alex thought about it, the brighter his eyes became, and there was a hint of excitement in his eyes when he looked at Eric. He leaned down and whispered in Eric's ear, Eric, Alex's voice became smaller and smaller, and a hint of joy gradually appeared on Eric's face. He looked up at Alex, nodded firmly, and said loudly, okay, I will complete the task. As he said that, Eric was about to jump off the bed, but Alex quickly reached out and held him down. Don't worry, it's not the time yet. After the previous battle, Sebastian Shaw had suffered heavy losses. There was no point in kicking the man when he was down, and it was not in line with Alex's idea of catching him all in one fell swoop. He would wait for Sebastian Shaw to find more people before implementing this plan. The next day, Alex and Eric leisurely appeared in the campground, as if nothing had happened. Natasha and Logan sat and lay by the wall, basking in the sun. Torchman, still alone in a corner, looked melancholic. Steve and Nick were training as usual, the only difference being that Speedy had joined them. Where's Namer? Hasn't he come back yet? Alex frowned after searching for Namor in vain. Given Namor's speed, he should have returned long ago. Who knows? Natasha shrugged, her pretty face filled with casualness. Maybe he can't stay and has returned to his Atlantis to become emperor. Alex nodded, unconcerned. Namor, the troublemaker, was actually better for the team if he left. After a brief hello, Alex left the camp and headed for Howard's lab. The plan still lacked a crucial piece, and Howard's help was needed. Alex didn't want to end up like Xuan, the man who failed to kill someone and ended up getting killed. Limit teleportation. Howard shook his head without hesitation after hearing Alex's request, a look of helplessness on his face. We've never been involved in this area before. I'm afraid it's going to be difficult to create what you want. Difficult? Alex was a little surprised. Both Hydra and the Hellfire Club seemed to be able to create this kind of device to limit teleportation. Alex had thought it would be easy to make. Howard looked at Alex's skeptical expression, a little excited, and his tone unconsciously rose a little. Of course it's difficult. This involves the space field, which is very complicated. It requires, seeing Howard getting more and more excited and ready to give a long speech, Alex wisely chose to retreat. After leaving the laboratory, Alex thought for a while and thought of another person. Fresh out of teleportation, Alex eagerly approached the respectful Strucker and asked bluntly, Strucker, does Hydra have a device that can limit teleportation? Without waiting for Strucker to speak, Alex grabbed a gun from a nearby lab table, gestured with it, and then said, I've seen Red Skull have such a device before, and he tried to imprison me. He failed, and I survived. Strucker lowered his head, a fierce glint in his respectful eyes, then vanished. Yes, they do, but their effectiveness is uncertain. Strucker raised his head slightly, furtively studying Alex's expression. Because we lack the necessary test subjects, we haven't actually done many human experiments. Alex hesitated. He wanted to be absolutely certain of success. But then he thought again, using it at least had a chance of success, but not using it, there was no chance of success at all. Then get a few more. If one doesn't work, get two. If two doesn't work, get four. Alex said very bluntly, I must take down Zio this time, and his mutants. Master, are you going to go to war with the Hellfire Club? Stark suddenly interrupted, his voice very light, and his facial expression became strange. Alex frowned slightly, then watched Strucker nod. He asked in surprise, What's wrong? I heard there's some strong reinforcements joining the Hellfire Club. Master, be careful. Alex's expression shifted slightly, but he quickly regained composure. He asked calmly, Strong reinforcements? Who are they? I don't know, Strucker said, his face unusually serious, his tone heavy. They say they're all level 4 mutants. Very dangerous? Alex seemed oblivious to Strucker's words, turning away and forgetting everything. He sternly declared, Get everything ready. I'll come get it when I need it. After a pause of several seconds, Alex emphasized, Remember to prepare more. The more the better. In reality, Alex wasn't as calm as he appeared. Strucker's words had a profound impact on Alex. The level 4 mutants could practically wipe out their group. After leaving Strucker, Alex returned to the Howling Commandos camp. Namor, who had been missing all night, suddenly appeared, his arms folded across his chest, staring at Alex with a look of resentment, his face blazing with rage that threatened to consume him. Alex kept his head down, not even glancing at Namor, pacing slowly across the field, seemingly lost in thought. Namor, furious at being ignored, roared and suddenly sprang into action, charging at Alex. Just as the two were about to collide, Steve, prepared, threw his shield, forcing Namor back. The others also jumped over and rallied around Alex. Namor, what are you doing? The most enraged among the group was Swift, who idolized Alex. He was so angry at the thought of his idol being bullied that he practically rolled up his sleeves and started a fight with Namor. Steve tolerated Namor several times, but at this moment, he also felt a little dissatisfied with Namor. Namor stretched his neck, straightened his body, glared at Alex fiercely, and turned away with a face full of unwillingness. As he walked, he did not forget to roar, I will prove myself. Namor is stronger than him, 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times stronger. Perhaps because Namor's voice was too loud, Alex woke up from his chaotic thoughts. He turned his head and looked around, his face solemn. I just got the news that the Hellfire Club is preparing to send more people. Turning around, he found that everyone's expression did not change. It seemed that they did not take his words to heart. Alex was secretly delighted, but he had to pour cold water on them. It is said that they are all level 4 mutants. Everyone's expression finally changed a little, but they were still casual. Level 4 mutants are level 4 mutants. What's the big deal? What's the big deal? It's useless even if they come. Seeing that everyone had a similar expression, Alex smiled. The army's morale can be used, which is a great thing. P.S. Scorpio had some problems at home, and he was busy all day and had no time at all. This chapter was rushed out overnight. I hope everyone can forgive me. Including the previous missing update, there are 2 missing updates in total. Scorpio will try to make up for it tomorrow. Also, the collection cannot be moved. I hope everyone will collect it. Thank you. Chapter 63, Capture in One Go. Another day passed in a flash. The blood-red sun gradually sank into the sea, and the sky turned black. The wind howled, and the faint smell of the sea could be smelled on the wind. On a small, isolated island in the Arctic Ocean, Alex, Steve, and other current members of the Howling Commandos were present. Even Howard, the logistics director, was there, dressed like a polar bear. Alex glanced at the heavily armed men around him, then at the chained iron cages not far away. He turned to Eric and said, "Eric, signal them." Eric nodded, pulled out a whistle, put it in his mouth, and blew it, his face flushing. But strangely, the whistle made no sound. Within a minute, Eric quickly pulled out a whistle, gasping for air as his face gradually regained color. "Is that all?" Feichi, still a troubled teenager, stared at Eric in astonishment, his gaze fixed on the mute whistle in Eric's hand. "This should be a special device that can emit ultrasound or infrasound," Howard said, almost robbing the whistle from Eric's hand as if he had found a treasure. He examined it carefully. "They should have a receiving device over there. Receiving the information means the plan is a success." Alex looked at Howard speechlessly, reached out to take the whistle back, handed it back to Eric, and said in a deep voice, "Forget about a whistle. We should be getting ready." As soon as Alex finished speaking, everyone present quickly moved. In just a moment, everyone disappeared, leaving Eric alone standing on this desolate island. A moment later, a puff of red smoke drifted past, and the Red Devil appeared. 7 others stood beside him, Sebastian Shaw, Riptide, Ironhide, and Firefist, along with 3 unfamiliar figures, 2 men and 1 woman. They were likely the level 4 mutants reportedly arriving, though their abilities were unknown. Through the telescope, Alex saw Shaw eagerly approach Eric, wrapping him in a gorgeous embrace. With a look of excitement on his face, he declared, "Good boy, I knew you could do it." Then, anxiously, he held out his hand. "Hurry, give me the stuff. Give me the stuff." Eric glanced over and saw the others who had accompanied the Red Devil approach. A flicker of satisfaction flashed in his eyes, and with a sudden thought, the anti-teleportation device he had long deployed beneath the snow instantly gathered. The moment Eric activated his device, Alex, also in the distance, sprang into existence, leading the others in a flash. He then immediately entered the device and, while Shaw and the others were still unaware, escaped with Eric. The whole thing happened so quickly, in less than a second. Zio didn't even register his thoughts, his mind still lost in the fabulous fantasy of obtaining the Tesseract. By the time he realized what was happening, it was too late. "You little bastard, you dare to trick me." Zio's face suddenly changed, and he pointed at Eric, who was standing next to Alex, and shouted. Alex stepped forward, blocking Eric behind him, and sneered at the unmannerly Zio. "Sebastian, you're a grown man, and you're getting angry with a child? Aren't you ashamed?" "Alex, I won't let you go." Zio glared at Alex sullenly, his words each word. "Please look carefully, you're in my hands now." Alex chuckled and shrugged, his face relaxed. "I should be the one saying this to you, Sebastian." Zio. At this moment, the Red Devil leaned over to Zio's ear and whispered something, presumably explaining the situation. His teleportation was restricted. Upon hearing this news, Zio was deeply surprised. His expression shifted slightly as he glanced around, seemingly in disbelief. Alex had been observing the expressions of Red Devil and Sebastian Shaw. Seeing their faces, he knew the device had taken effect. He quickly turned to Eric and said, "Eric, restrain them." Eric sprang to action. Instantly, several iron bars suddenly appeared, restraining Zio and the others, preventing them from moving. The 3 newcomers were particularly under Eric's scrutiny. Several iron bars were tangled around their bodies, preventing them from even moving a finger. Some of the bars even pierced their bodies. As for Red Devil, Alex controlled him and stuffed him into a special iron armor suit, also made of multiple layers of anti-teleportation devices, to prevent his escape. "It's done." Howard looked incredulous, as if he couldn't believe the mission was so simple. "You two can do it." "We don't even need to do it." Howard's words were echoed by Steve and the others, who nodded in agreement, their eyes filled with a hint of helplessness, and a sense of their own uselessness. Alex, not one to take credit for himself, quickly explained, "That's not right. We'll need your help next." As he spoke, Alex dismantled the outer layer of the large device. The Red Devil was already trapped, so there was no need to worry about the others. They would be captured one by one. They had to be separated and not kept in the same cell, otherwise it would cause chaos. Why not just kill them and be done with it all? Namor reached out and slid the fire fist out of the device, shaking it vigorously. He looked at Steve with some confusion and asked, his tone much calmer, less aggressive than before. Steve gently placed the mutant he was carrying on his shoulders on the ground. He looked at Namor sternly and said, "Killing isn't the only solution, nor is it the best solution." Before Steve could finish his words, he was struck by a sudden explosion. Caught off guard, Steve was blown away, his entire waist covered in blood. It was a terrifying sight. Seeing Steve injured, Alex's face dropped. He quickly dropped the iron armor restraining the Red Devil and appeared beside Steve. He scooped him up and quickly ran away, landing more than 10 meters away. The others reacted a little slower, but they also immediately gathered around the explosion. As they approached, several more explosions erupted, forcing everyone to retreat. By the time they gathered again, the mutant Steve had just carried had broken free from the bars. The young man was in a horrible state, 7 or 8 of his 10 fingers broken, and blood was gushing all over the floor. There wasn't a single spot on his body that was unharmed, as if he'd just stepped out of a minefield. Strangely, the young man seemed oblivious to his injuries, a strange smile plastered across his face. "Surrender immediately, or..." Nick pointed his heavy machine gun at the young man. Just as he uttered a few words, the young man reached out and touched Fire Fist beside him, and another explosion erupted. This time, everyone finally saw the cause of the blast. The young man's fingers suddenly snapped off, then suddenly exploded like a balloon, severing the iron bar in Fire Fist's right hand. "Don't come near, or I'll self-destruct." The young man turned to look at the crowd approaching again, his smile growing even more strange. "I haven't tried it. But I once blew up a leg, and everything within 100 meters was blown away." This statement stunned everyone, and they looked at the young man with a hint of wariness. The weak fear the strong fear the aggressive fear the reckless, and the reckless fear the desperate. This man before them was the desperate one, and the most dangerous. P.S. Has the potential reached its limit? My collection isn't growing anymore. What's going on? Scorpio, please collect, recommend and support. Chapter 64 Landing. Hearing Carter's words, everyone stood up excitedly, their faces lit with joy. "After all this fighting, we're finally going to counterattack." Nick Fury straightened his hat and said impatiently, "If this drags on, I'll go crazy. I hope there won't be another accident like last time." Speedy was equally excited, but his racing mind was full of circuits incomprehensible to ordinary people, and his words immediately drew the ire of the crowd. The last Normandy landings, the tragic loss of the Howling Commandos and the heavy Allied losses, were painful memories that no one wanted to talk about. Speedy would naturally suffer for speaking out. Natasha raised her hand and tapped Speedy's forehead hard, feigning anger. "Kid, don't talk nonsense." Logan was even more direct, extending 2 bony claws and gesturing back and forth at Speedy's forehead, frightening him into breaking out in a cold sweat. Alex was the only one whose spirits were subdued. For him, the Normandy landings and the Allied victory were not as joyful as the Japanese surrender. He laughed a few times, turned to look at Carter and asked, "Isn't this just another show?" The Normandy landings were a large-scale military operation, and adding the Howling Commandos wouldn't be of much use, especially now that the Hellfire Club had chosen to withdraw. If the Howling Commandos were to go to the front lines again, they would probably only serve a show. Carter hesitated, then nodded and said, "Command wants you to inspire the Allied fighting spirit. You are now the spiritual banner of the Allies. With you, the soldiers can unleash even more potential." Listening to Carter's long speech, Alex reached out to stop him, saying with disdain, "To put it bluntly, it's just a show." Seeing Alex like this, Carter was about to continue persuading him, but before he could say anything, Alex spoke again. Stop talking. I didn't say I wouldn't participate, Alex said, turning and walking towards a nearby recliner, muttering as he went, you keep whining like Tang Sanzang. Alex's last words were spoken in Chinese, and of the people present, only Natasha could understand. However, she was unaware of the hidden meaning behind them and looked at Alex with a strange expression. The Normandy landings officially began on the third day. Nearly 1 million Allied troops crossed the English Channel and landed in Normandy, France. Nearly 2 million more Allied troops would follow in the landings, a battle destined to go down in history. It was a beautiful day, the English Channel tranquil. Thousands of landing ships filled the narrow expanse of water, densely packed and imposing. The 8 Howling Commandos were aboard one of them. What are you going to do after the war? Alex, now addicted to cigars after sharing a cigar with Logan, puffed on a Churchill he'd snatched from Logan, his eyes fixed straight ahead, a hint of sadness etched in them. Go home, maybe become a cartoonist, Steve said, standing at the bow, his body erect like a pole. After a pause, he replied, you know, that's my dream, maybe you could draw yourself. Captain America punching a mustache, that's bound to make a lot of money, Alex chuckled and turned to look at Logan. Noticing Alex's gaze, Logan took a deep drag on his cigar and swallowed it. Who knows what the future holds? Find a place in the mountains, marry a woman, and live a peaceful and leisurely life, Alex paused. From what he knew, Logan's future wouldn't be dull. He'd be there for the Vietnam War. And that hated Colonel Stryker would inject Logan with adamantium, transforming him into the true Wolverine. In short, Logan's life was destined to be anything but ordinary. Alex, lost in thought, didn't notice that Nick had already finished his words. I should be going back to the Soviet Union. Natasha twisted her wrist, glancing sideways at Alex beside her, a little dejected. I'm really happy to be fighting alongside you guys. Me too, Steve and the others said simultaneously, a faint smile unconsciously appearing on their faces. The 3 flying spurs behind them also wanted to join in, but after thinking it over, they decided not to. Alex, what about you? Steve suddenly turned his head to look at Alex. You're not really going to Hollywood, are you? Of course, I also want to open a film company. Alex's mouth corners raised slightly, and his mind thought of Eric who stayed in the camp. How about, do you want to join me? With your figure and appearance, you will definitely be the next Clark Gable. Steve shook his head repeatedly, and then chuckled, forget it, I'd rather be a cartoonist. Actually, my first movie is going to be Captain America. If you play the role, it will definitely be a box office hit. Alex imagined the future, and the more he thought about it, the more excited he became. Not only Steve, but also our Howling Commandos. Let's put them all in. What do you think? Be sure to find someone more handsome. I don't want a fool to play me. Logan smoked a smoke ring coolly, looked at Alex with a squint, and said threateningly, if you are ugly, I will come to settle the score with you. As soon as Logan finished speaking, Natasha also put on a stinky face, staring at Alex fiercely and saying word by word, anyone can play me, but that Vivian Lee definitely can't. Otherwise, I will rush to America and kill her. Does it have to be so serious? Alex laughed bitterly and said helplessly, I was just joking. Do you think I really want to do it? Even if I wanted to, I don't have the skills, huh? Fei Chi looked at Alex with disappointment. I was thinking of making a cameo appearance in it. Nick also showed disappointment, staring at his one eye unwillingly. I was just thinking, who would be more suitable to play me? It seems that there are no particularly famous black people in Hollywood. What a failure. I will let you know when I'm ready to shoot. Alex picked up the cigar in his mouth, raised his head slightly and looked at the blue sky, with a faint smile on his face. Believe me, I will definitely make it, and all of us will be in it. The Howling Commandos stood at the bow, chatting and laughing, occasionally bursting into hearty laughter, which seemed to be somewhat out of place with the silence of the entire landing ship. Every soldier on the landing ship kept turning their eyes to them, and a hint of surprise and curiosity would unconsciously appear on their faces, some of them young and some of them indifferent. The originally tense atmosphere gradually dissipated. Gradually, a narrow line appeared on the sea in the distance. The beach was approaching, and the tension that had just dissipated once again enveloped everyone. Even the Howling Commandos gradually stopped chatting and laughing, and their eyes looked forward with a hint of sharpness. P.S. For those reading this book, don't forget to bookmark it and don't forget to vote for it. Chapter 65 Accident. In a war involving millions of soldiers, the Howling Commandos' strength was nothing, powerless to change anything. As Alex himself had said, They were there for show. In the end, they only caused trouble for themselves, a sheer waste of suffering. Especially when they saw the bright red river of blood that formed at the edge of the mudflats, the stench of blood that filled the air was enough to make one nauseous. Feichi, after all, was still young, and the first to be overcome. His face was completely pale, and his eyes were slightly white. "Can you hold on?" Alex supported Feichi with one hand, ducking sideways in the landing craft. "No, I'll take you back." Feichi opened his mouth to speak, but the words escaped as he opened his mouth, only to be met with a mouthful of foul language. Alex, without a word, disappeared with Feichi in his arms, returning a moment later to watch the soldiers charging ahead. His gaze passed over the rows of trenches and landed on the bunker at the end of the mudflats, responsible for the massive losses inflicted on the landing. Unable to change the overall course of the battle, Alex sought to influence the outcome of this particular stretch of beach. With a flick of his body, Alex vanished from the landing craft again. In a split second, the heavy machine guns that had been decimating Allied soldiers ceased firing. The excited Allied soldiers ran with all their might. The battle raged on, and the howling commandos continued to do their part. When all was quiet, countless bodies lay strewn along the long Normandy coastline, both Allied and Japanese. Blood stained the shore like red algae crawling ashore. The beach landings were over, and the Allied forces' overall success was unremarkable. The only significant achievement was in the howling commandos' position. With the howling commandos' assistance, the Allies successfully established a secure foothold on the Japanese coastline. The show was a resounding success. The next day, using this stronghold as their center, the Allies launched attacks from all sides, chipping away at the Japanese coastal defenses. After half a month, the Japanese were ultimately powerless. The Allies landed in full force in Normandy, sending the Japanese fleeing in panic. Another half-month passed, and the Allied forces advanced all the way to Paris, France, liberating the city. The Normandy landing was over. With the Normandy landing over, the Howling Commandos' mission should have ended. However, in view of the powerful force displayed by the Howling Commandos during the Normandy landing and the huge boost to morale, the command reassigned the mission, and all the Howling Commandos were dispersed and assigned to different attack forces. No one in the Howling Commandos objected to the command's arrangement. After all, it was all a show, and it would be the same no matter where they were. What Alex didn't expect was that this farewell would become a farewell forever. When Alex learned from Carter that Steve was in danger, he was completely stunned and his mind went blank. After a long pause, he finally came to his senses. He turned to stare at Carter, his face savage and angrily roaring, "Tell me, what's going on? Tell me." Carter's eyes flushed slightly as he fought back the tears that threatened to burst. He spoke slowly, each word emphasizing, it was originally just a normal military operation, attacking a small town. But we never expected that after the army captured the town, Steve's whereabouts were unknown. Alex was stunned for a moment as he watched Carter's tears flow uncontrollably. Then, his whole body snapped back to normal, and he asked grimly, "What do you mean missing? We didn't find Steve." Carter's tears grew faster and faster, as if a dam had burst. Alex gently hugged Carter and whispered soothingly, "Don't worry, Carter, I will find Steve." As he consoled Carter, Alex's rage grew stronger, threatening to burn the world to the ground. He had thought that with Hydra under his wing, Steve would be safe, but to his surprise, Steve was in trouble after all. This reminded Alex of Bucky once again. The brothers he tried so hard to save, one had already disappeared, and the other was still missing. Could it be that the wheel of history was truly unchangeable? After a moment, Carter seemed to regain his composure. He stepped out of Alex's embrace, gently wiped the tears from his face, looked at Alex and said slowly, "I've already asked that army." Steve seemed to have disappeared suddenly. They don't know where Steve went or what happened to him. As he spoke, Carter pulled out a few photos from his pocket. "These are photos of that small town. You can take a look." Alex frowned, picked up the photos, and looked at them for a few seconds. "Wait for me, I'll go take a look." Alex didn't rush to the small town immediately. He first went to find Stark. "Strucker, what have you done?" Alex immediately erupted, his hands gripping Strucker's neck as he demanded, his face filled with rage. "I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you." Stunned, Strucker paused for a long moment before coughing and shouting, "What happened? You know what's going on." Alex stared intently into Strucker's eyes. If his gaze faltered even slightly, Alex would kill him without hesitation. But to Alex's disappointment, Strucker's eyes held nothing but surprise and fear. "Master, I really don't understand." Strucker's face flushed with breathlessness, his voice trembling. Alex stared at Strucker for a moment, then, with a look of resignation, dropped Strucker and said, "Steve's accident is truly unrelated to Hydra." Strucker was taken aback for a moment, then gave a wry smile and explained, "According to the Master, Hydra has completely withdrawn from Europe. In Europe, we only retain our intelligence systems." Alex's heart raced at this, and he quickly stood up. Grabbing Strucker, he asked expectantly, "Have you heard anything?" "No doubt about it, it must be the Hellfire Club," Strucker said without hesitation. "No one in Europe will oppose you now except them." Hellfire Club. Alex's mind suddenly cleared. The sudden news of Steve's accident had completely disoriented him, leaving him completely bewildered, unable to even think. Strucker's reminder brought him to a sudden realization. Since Hydra had been absorbed by him, the only ones holding a grudge against the Howling Commandos were the Hellfire Club. The Hellfire Club had only reached an agreement with the politicians, not a truce with the Howling Commandos. Their revenge on Steve made perfect sense. The more Alex thought about it, the more likely it seemed. Without a second thought, he left Straker and instantly appeared in the town where Steve had been in trouble. The town was truly small. Alex had only walked around for 2 or 3 hours to explore it. Alex had indeed discovered some clues. And his expression grew increasingly gloomy. Noticing Alex's departure, Straker's expression suddenly became strange, a strange smile breaking through his respectful face. Chapter 66. Here comes a peach picker. When Alex returned to camp, all the Howling Commandos had gathered, even Namer, who had always been unhappy with Alex. From their expressions, it was clear that they had already learned of Steve's accident. "Alex, how can I help you?" Torchman spoke for the first time, his weathered face filled with concern. "Just tell me, and I'll do it, thank you." Alex stared at Torchman for a long moment, then nodded in thanks. He turned to look at the others, his eyes blazing with anger, but his voice was unusually cold. "I already know who did it, and now I'm going to make them pay." "Who?" Logan and the others asked in unison. Alex scanned the crowd again, his gaze finally landing on Carter in the corner. "The Hellfire Club, how is that possible?" Carter stood up suddenly, looking at Alex in astonishment. "They've already reached an agreement with the Allies, they don't care, and neither do the generals." Alex's voice suddenly rose an octave, his neck stiffening as he shouted. In their eyes, Steve is just an ordinary soldier, ready to sacrifice at any time for their benefit. Carter was stunned. Tears trickled down his cheeks, then burst forth completely, tears pouring down like rain. Alex ignored Carter and turned to look at Howard. "Howard, have you heard anything about the Hellfire Club?" "Just the other day, they tried to invite me to join the Hellfire Club." Howard shrugged, his face relaxed. "But I declined." Alex remained silent, staring at Howard. "Coincidentally, the person looking for me is Sebastian Shaw," Howard said with a sly laugh, a look of pride on his face. "Even more coincidentally, I left a mark on him. Now, it's in Las Vegas, photo or map, I'm going to find him." Alex's face grew increasingly grim, and he spoke through gritted teeth. As Alex finished speaking, Logan and the others stepped forward, saying, "Let's go too." Even Eric joined in. "None of you can leave." As everyone finished speaking, an unexpected figure appeared outside the camp. He was dressed in an American uniform with stars and stripes, carrying a shield also bearing the same pattern. At first glance, he looked like Captain America. Not only was his height and build similar, but his appearance was so similar that someone unfamiliar with him might mistake him for Steve. "Who are you?" Others might make mistakes, but Alex would never. He was Steve's brother. This is the new Captain America. He'll be the new leader of the Howling Commandos and lead them into Berlin to capture Hitler. A colonel-clad officer stepped out from behind the fake Captain America, his youthful face radiating a sickening arrogance. "And I'm Nemo, the new liaison officer for the Howling Commandos." Alex scowled at the fake Captain America and his supposed liaison officer, pointing at the camp gate. "Get out." The officer, seemingly lost in his own reverie, didn't hear Alex's words, nor did he notice the angry expressions on the others' faces. He spoke to himself, "Our first mission now is to cooperate with the Allies and liberate all of France." "Shut up." Alex instantly appeared in front of the youth and kicked him, sending him tumbling out of the camp. The fake Captain America's face instantly changed. He stared at Alex in horror, as if he had seen an evil spirit. He screamed, turned, and quickly ran out of the camp. The soldiers who came with the two looked at each other, remained silent for a moment, and then ran out of the camp obediently. Just a moment later, the pretty boy and the fake Captain America appeared again, their faces full of anger, followed by several generals with shining military ranks. Alex, one of the generals, was an old acquaintance. It was Phillips, who had not been seen for a long time, the former colonel of the recruit training base, who has now been promoted to general. Unfortunately, Phillips was interrupted by Alex as soon as he called out a name. "I'm going to Las Vegas now, no one can stop me, Alex." Phillips was interrupted again as soon as he said something. "Don't you just want the Howling Commandos?" Alex sneered and took off his military uniforms one by one. "Now, I'll give them to you. From now on, I am no longer a member of the Howling Commandos." Alex didn't care about the Howling Commandos at all. Since someone wanted them, just give them to him. "What do you think this place is? A place you can come and go as you please." The pretty boy, his face covered in bruises and dust, stood up, his presence swaggering and hilariously dignified. No one paid him any attention. Logan, Natasha, Nick Fury, and every member of the Howling Commandos stood up, following Alex in the process, removing their uniforms and making their stance clear. "You're rebelling. This is a mutiny," the ridiculous pretty boy, once again asserting his presence, shouted. "Come on, arrest them all. Don't spare a single one." Alex snorted coldly, his body vanishing, taking the pretty boy with him. In an instant, Alex reappeared alone, enveloping the Howling Commandos and disappearing from the camp. The generals hadn't paid much attention to Alex and the others' disappearance, but when they realized the pretty boy had vanished as well, their expressions suddenly changed. "Where's Nemo?" Suddenly, they heard a series of shrill screams overhead. Looking up, they saw a figure plummeting downwards. It sounded like the vanished Nemo. "Quick, find a way to save him," the general spun around in panic. "Don't worry, he's got a parachute. He'll be fine." Phillips, with his sharp eyes, spotted Nemo's parachute immediately. However, Nemo seemed completely unaware it was a parachute and hesitated to deploy it. Phillips didn't say anything. Seeing the general seem relieved, he snorted coldly and said, "I told you not to mess with them, especially when Steve's in trouble. Now you've seen what I've done." Phillips strongly opposed the command's actions, but unfortunately, as a newly promoted general, he had no say and could only let them run wild. Unfortunately, Phillips' words had the opposite effect, only igniting the general's anger. "Come here, arrest them immediately. Don't let any of them go." Looking at the angry generals, Phillips snorted and said quietly, "I'm afraid they've already reached Las Vegas." Chapter 67. Emma Frost. They reappeared in a desolate desert, with the dazzling neon lights of Las Vegas, the future gambling city, in the distance. Alex didn't look back at Las Vegas, but instead looked at the people around him with a guilty look on his face. "I'm sorry for getting you all into trouble this time." Logan, always with a cigar in his mouth, puffed out a puff of smoke and said casually, "I've been wanting to leave for a long time, and this is the perfect opportunity. I'm definitely going back to the Soviet Union. There's no way I'm staying." Natasha shrugged, her beautiful eyebrows twitching slightly with a hint of lust. Nick Fury pointed to his head and said self-deprecatingly, "With my skin color, I'm definitely finished once the war ends. I'm the king of Atlantis, and humans can't control me," Namor said defiantly, his head raised in disdain. Feichi ran around Alex for more than 10 laps with a smug look on his face. "I run fast. They can't do anything to me. I am destined to be sealed up, and it's not bad to do something meaningful in the end." The torch man showed a hint of warmth in his indifferent eyes. "At least you will remember me. I am already very happy. No need to look at me. The federal government's munitions still rely on me. They will not offend me." Seeing Alex turning his gaze to himself, Howard put his hands in his pockets and said with ease. Finally, Alex turned his head to look at Carter. Carter stared at Alex for a long time and said in a deep voice, "I just want to find Steve now, and take revenge." Alex nodded and repeated, "Find Steve, and take revenge." After that, Alex looked at Howard again. Just as he was about to speak, Howard spoke first. "The target is in Las Vegas, about 5 kilometers away from here." Alex leaned over to glance at the device in Howard's hand. It was a device that looked like a mechanical watch. There was an interface like a radar scan map on it. A red dot kept flashing. There was no direction indication, let alone distance display. Alex couldn't understand it at all. Alex said decisively, "Lead the way." After following Howard for about 10 minutes, they stopped in front of a bar. From the door that was constantly opened and closed, they could see that it was dark and noisy inside. Glancing down at the device in his hand, Then back up at the bar, Howard assured him, "He's in there, everyone, split up and look. Don't let him get away." The bar was quite large, dark, and noisy, so Alex chose to split up. Even if they encountered Sebastian Shaw, everyone could quickly provide support, and there was no need to worry about safety. They quickly split up, some heading for the back door, others venturing to the rooftop. Alex led Logan and Natasha into the bar, while Howard and Carter remained outside to provide support. As they entered the bar, deafening music pounded into their ears like thunder, causing a slight tinnitus in all three. Split up. After a long moment of adjustment, Alex shouted at Logan and Natasha at the top of his voice. The bar was bustling with activity, and the crowd was surging. Finding Sebastian Shaw would be difficult. Splitting up might speed things up. The three of them separated in perfect unison, one headed for the bar, one for the dance floor, and one for the surrounding booths. Alex's target was the dance floor. He made his way through the crowd, where scantily clad women kept approaching him. Alex coldly pushed them away, his eyes scanning the surroundings. The bar's dance floor was quite large, with a stage jutting out from the center. Alex finished his search and was about to walk around the stage to the other side when a burst of upbeat, passionate music suddenly blared, sending the crowd into a frenzy, especially the men, whose eyes lit up. Just as he was beginning to wonder, a tall woman emerged from behind the stage. She wore minimal clothing, her exposed, white skin igniting the male urges of everyone present. Alex was captivated by the stunning woman. Suddenly, she grabbed her sleeveless leather jacket with both hands and ripped it savagely apart. Screaming, she stripped it off and threw it off the stage. As luck would have it, the jacket fell right into Alex's hands. Alex looked at the leather jacket in his hands and suddenly came to his senses. Just as he was about to discard it and continue his search, he suddenly, for some unknown reason, brought it to his nose and sniffed it. His once clear mind seemed to fog back again, forgetting the jacket, Sebastian Shaw, and Steve. All he could see was the stunning woman on the stage, dancing endlessly. Emma. Emma, one more, listening to the deafening shouts, Alex, drunkenly, gazed at the stripper with loving eyes, muttering to himself, Emma, what a beautiful name. On the stage, the stripper, still energetically dancing, noticed Alex's bewitched expression and a smug smile crossed her stunning face. As her passionate striptease ended, Emma turned and headed backstage. The reluctant crowd below the stage stared at her retreating figure in a trance. Alex, who had been standing still for a long time, suddenly moved, following the dancer backstage with a devout smile. The reverence of a pilgrim. Unrelated text follows. Sebastian Shaw, dressed in a sharp suit, sat casually on a sofa with a glass of red wine. Red Devil, Riptide, and several of the mutants who had followed him stood nearby. Emma suddenly walked in, a faint sneer on her beautiful face. I've brought the people. Emma had barely finished speaking when Alex followed in, a look of dazed surprise on his face. Emma, thank you. Sebastian Shaw raised his glass to Emma from afar, an excited smile on his elegant face. You are really my lucky star. He found a white windbreaker from the corner and put it on his body, which was only left with shorts and a bra, covering most of his body. He pointed at Alex and said seriously, his mind is very strong. I can't control him for long. If you have to do anything, do it as soon as possible. Sebastian Shaw's face changed immediately when he heard this. He was no longer as calm as before. He asked quickly, hurry up and look for it. Where is the cosmic cube? Cosmic cube, Em repeated, looking intently into Alex's eyes. After a while, she turned her head to look at Sebastian Shaw with a confused look, shook her head and said, I can't find it. Maybe it's because his mind is too strong. How is that possible? Sebastian Shaw suddenly got excited, stood up from the sofa, pointed at Emma and shouted, Frost, you must find the cosmic cube for me today. Chapter 68, Psychic Storm. Emma's expression changed slightly at this, a sharp gleam flashing across her eyes as she looked at Zio, then vanished in an instant. Emma took a deep breath, turned back to Alex, and said in a low voice, okay. Meanwhile, in the bar, Logan and Natasha had gathered, both with disappointed expressions on their faces. Where's Alex? Natasha turned her head to look towards the dance floor, but couldn't find him. Alex was tall, with dark hair, making him easy to spot on the crowd. Logan turned his head, but also couldn't see Alex. Suddenly, a thought struck him, did we run into Zio? Let's go help. As soon as Logan finished speaking, Natasha rushed out. Logan shook his head in frustration, tucked his cigar between his fingers, and ran after Natasha, shouting as he ran, "You don't even know where Alex is? How can we help? Just look for him." Natasha continued to move forward, darting through the bustling dance floor like a fish. Compared to the unrestrained Natasha, Logan's approach was much more direct. Anyone who stood in his way was simply pushed aside by him. No one could resist him. It was extremely violent. Facing the burly Logan, no one dared to provoke him and allowed him to pass. In the backstage room, Emma paused again, her pretty face slightly pale, and beads of sweat oozed from her smooth forehead. "What did you find?" Zio stepped forward impatiently, his broad hands tightly grasping Emma's arms, his face full of anxiety. Emma panted a few times, shook her head, and explained helplessly, "His mind is really too strong. I can only sense some insignificant memories. As long as it involves secret matters, his mind, no matter what method you use, you must find the cosmic cube." Before Emma could finish, Zio shouted, and the strength in his hands unconsciously increased a little. Emma cried out in pain and struggled to pull her hand back, but her strength was no match for Zio's enhanced energy, and no matter how hard she struggled, she couldn't move an inch. "Find the Tesseract." Zio's face grew increasingly sinister, his eyes filled with murderous intent. "Or I'll send you all to hell." At that moment, the tightly closed door flung open. "You're here, Logan," a cigar between his lips, leaned leisurely against the door frame. He looked at the slightly dazed people in the room and said with a relaxed expression, "Alex, why didn't you tell them? Are you planning to take them on alone?" Seeing Logan, Zio turned to look at the Red Devil and Riptide beside him. Just as he was about to speak, Emma's face suddenly changed. "Be careful, there are a lot of them." After a slight pause, she added, 9 people, they've surrounded the bar, all the Howling Commandos are here." Zio was slightly surprised at the words, then sneered, "Since you're all here, today we'll take you all down." With that, Zio turned to look at the Red Devil and Riptide behind him. The two glanced at each other and moved in tacit understanding. One attacked Logan, while the other disappeared from the room, presumably to find someone else. Logan paid no attention to the rushing Riptide. His eyes were fixed on Alex. He had noticed something was wrong with Alex since he entered. His previous words had been tentative, but now Logan was certain that Alex was in trouble. Without a second thought, Logan extended 2 bone claws and charged forward, intent on rescuing Alex. Meanwhile, Natasha, who had been sneaking in for a sneak attack, noticed Alex's anomaly and, without even bothering with a sneak attack, charged directly at Alex. Shore reacted quickly, leaping in before the 2 men could move, blocking Alex and confronting Logan. Several other mutants immediately surrounded them, engaging Logan and Natasha. Under the combined attack of the mutants, Logan and Natasha were in dire straits. After a few rounds, they were cornered, their defeat imminent. Just then, Speedy, Namor, and Torchman burst in almost simultaneously, turning the tide. Seeing the 3 people appear, Natasha waved her hand to repel the iron-hard iron sheet all over her body. She turned her head to look at Fei-Chi, who was about to join in, and said quickly, "Fei-Chi, take Alex away." Fei-Chi was slightly surprised. He turned his head and saw Alex standing next to a scantily clad woman with a dazed look on his face. "What's wrong with Alex? Don't ask too many questions, just do it." Nick Fury rushed in from outside like a god of war, and the heavy machine gun in his hand swept everywhere without distinguishing friend from foe. Fei-Chi nodded and made a gesture to rush towards Alex, but suddenly he was frozen in place, unable to move at all. Frightened, Fei-Chi screamed out, "What's going on? Why can't I move?" This was of course Emma's masterpiece. She discovered Fei-Chi's motive and froze his consciousness. While Emma was secretly gloating, Zio, standing nearby, flew into a rage. He pointed at the still dazed Alex and shouted, "Ignore these little idiots. Keep an eye on him and find the cosmic cube." Emma glanced at Fei-Chi with a grievance, released her control, and focused on sensing Alex. But then, Emma suddenly realized that Alex's mind was violently trembling. The previously calm inner fire suddenly raged, like a firestorm, surging with such intensity that it felt like all destruction, causing her soul to crumble. No, Emma's face paled. Terrified, she dared not sense Alex anymore and tried to retreat. But to her even greater horror, the raging mental storm had swept her mind in. Now it was too late for her to escape. "Run!" Emma barely managed to utter a single word before Alex swept her into a boundless frenzy. Emma's voice was loud, heard by everyone, but no one ran. Unaware of what was about to happen, They chose to deal with their current opponent. Having lived 2 lives, Alex's mind was immensely powerful, and later, enhanced by the cosmic cube, it became even more terrifying. However, until now, Alex's mind had been primarily used for teleportation, never truly demonstrating its power. Now, the psychic storm unleashed by Emma's telepathy revealed its full power. For a brief moment, all of Las Vegas seemed to freeze in time. Space and time stood still, only the incredibly violent psychic storm raged. It seemed as if a moment, then a century, had passed before Las Vegas came alive again, and everyone went about their business as if nothing had happened. In reality, some had lost memories, some abilities, and some even their lives. Furthermore, 2 people were missing. P.S. Scorpio is having a hard time. I lost my ID card and have been searching and thinking about it all night. I'm completely out of my element, barely posting a chapter. Sorry, I'll make up for it tomorrow. Hopefully I can find my ID card tomorrow. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69 Jurassic Park. Suddenly, a gurgling sound was heard. Alex turned to Emma, surprised, and asked, "Have I slept for a long time?" Emma nodded, then pointed to a large mushroom at Alex's feet. "You've been asleep for 7 days. I knew you'd be hungry, so I prepared this just for you. Have you been eating this all these days?" Fighting back his churning stomach, Alex turned his gaze away from the mushroom, its mottled dirt making it unappetizing. Emma said nothing, but her expression suggested it. "Aren't there any animals?" Alex turned to gaze at the dense jungle around them. "At least there should be some birds, right?" "Sorry, I've searched every kilometer around, and there's nothing." Emma shrugged, a look of resignation on her face. "Not even an ant, let alone a wild animal." Alex looked at Emma skeptically, unconvinced. This was a forest, not the Dead Sea. How could there not even be an ant? "If you don't believe me, go find it yourself." Emma couldn't stand Alex's questioning look, and like a cat whose tail was stepped on, she immediately jumped up and shouted, "As long as you find a living thing, I..." After hesitating for a while, Emma suddenly yelled hysterically, "I will be your woman." Seeing Emma's crazy look, Alex believed her words a little. He lowered his head and silently picked up the big mushroom, dusted it lightly, separated it into 2 halves, and handed 1 half to Emma. "You haven't eaten either, half each? Do you think I want to harm you?" Emma returned to her cold look, with her hands on her chest, looking coldly at the mushroom handed over by Alex, and said with disdain, "If I wanted to harm you, you would have died long ago." Alex was slightly stunned when he heard this, then he smiled bitterly and explained repeatedly, "I really don't mean that. I just want to share some food with you, that's all." After a small misunderstanding, the 2 were silent and each finished a big mushroom in their hands. Alex felt a dry taste in his mouth, making it difficult to swallow. Just as he was about to spit it out, he turned and saw Emma expressionlessly swallowing her food. Then, she tore off a large piece, stuffed it into her mouth, chewed it a few times, and immediately swallowed it. She tore it off again, swallowed it again, and in a few seconds, she had devoured the entire large mushroom. Alex was completely stunned. He looked at Emma as if he were looking at Belle, the woman at the top of the food chain. After barely finishing the mushroom in his hand and feeling his stomach gradually fill up, Alex finally breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't have to starve to death, nor did he have to be poisoned. He stood up and stretched a little, then turned to Emma and said, "Let's go. Let's get going and find a way out." Emma nodded calmly, stood up, and walked over to Alex. After walking for about an hour, Alex finally believed Emma's words. Along the way, Alex didn't hear any bird song, nor did he encounter any flying insects. It really proved Emma's words. There's not even an ant. "Emma, what kind of place is this forest? Why is it so weird?" Seeing that the atmosphere was a bit dull, Alex took the initiative to bring up the topic. Emma's steps paused slightly, then returned to normal, and she said in a calm voice, "This forest is indeed very strange, so strange that it doesn't seem real." Alex saw Emma's reply, and chuckled and replied, "Is everything we see fake?" "It's not fake, it's more like an experimental base." Emma frowned slightly, and said seriously, "Only in an experimental base can there be such a strange forest." "Experimental base?" Alex shook his head and disagreed with Emma's words. We have been walking for an hour. Does the experimental base need to be so big? Emma's tone suddenly changed, and she became a little excited. The school I build in the future will have a larger experimental base than this forest. You want to build a school? Alex stopped and turned to look at Emma strangely. Why would anyone want to build a school? It's not a charity. Why would anyone want to build a school for no reason? Emma also paused, looked at Wang Xia, took a deep breath, and said in a low voice, actually, my dream is to be a teacher. A teacher? Alex was increasingly puzzled. He had first met her at a bar, and now she was doing a striptease. They seemed so different. I love the satisfaction of imparting knowledge to others, as if she had found someone to confide in. Emma poured out her dreams. I've wanted to be a teacher since I was a child. Do you know who my first students were? Could it be your doll? Listening to Emma's cheerful voice, Alex remembered that he, too, had longed to be a teacher. But he loved the sense of authority and the sense of pride that came with being able to punish students at any moment. Emma's joy grew as she spoke, and she couldn't help but dance with joy, like a teacher teaching at the podium. Alex resumed his journey, his ears filled with Emma's incessant chatter and her occasional cheerful laughter. After walking for over an hour, the forest remained almost identical to the previous one, its eerie, silent silence unchanged. Just as Alex was feeling a bit bitter, a deafening roar suddenly echoed in his ears. The massive sonic boom rattled the leaves around him, and Alex felt as if he were going deaf. What's that sound? After a long pause, Alex regained his composure and turned to Emma in shock. Emma, also a bit stunned, was snapped back to her senses at Alex's voice. After a moment's hesitation, she said, it sounds like the roar of some kind of beast. After a pause, Emma added, it's probably a large beast. Smaller ones can't make such a loud noise. As soon as Emma finished speaking, Alex leaped out, the dagger clutched in his hand. Alex had had enough of the strange smell of the giant mushroom, and for the sake of his future tongue, he decided to kill the beast. But as Alex pushed through the trees and reached the source of the roar, he froze upon seeing the creature before him. Emma, following closely behind, was also stunned. She was stunned for a long moment before mumbling, how is this possible? The massive beast Emma was talking about was no ordinary beast. Its massive frame measured over 10 meters long and 4 meters tall, and its gaping maw held a ferocious array of palm-sized teeth. The mere sight of it made anyone tremble. Is this the Tyrannosaurus Rex? Alex had seen a dinosaur movie before, and the Tyrannosaurus Rex in it looked exactly like the one before him. Emma nodded and was about to speak when a sharp roar erupted from her mouth. A dark shadow grew larger from the sky, and as it descended closer, it was even larger than the Tyrannosaurus Rex, almost as big as the plane. A pterosaur. Alex felt his brain wasn't enough. Are we in Jurassic Park? P.S. I'll be updating later this night. Scorpio is definitely going to make it this time. Go for it. Chapter 70, Chasing. Jurassic Park. Emma looked at Alex in surprise after hearing what he said. Is there such a park? Alex shrugged and pointed at the Tyrannosaurus Rex and pterosaur that were fighting. Isn't this it? Emma was slightly stunned, chuckled and said, this park is really big. As she said that, Emma raised her chin and nodded the dagger in Alex's hand, and asked with a strange look on her face, what should we do now? Do we still have to hunt them? Alex could naturally hear the sarcasm in Emma's words. He looked down at the dagger in his hand, then looked at the two big dinosaur brothers who were fighting fiercely. His head shook like a roller coaster, and he said quickly, let's not disturb them, let's retreat quickly. Unfortunately, things did not go as planned. As soon as Alex finished speaking, the more ferocious Tyrannosaurus Rex bit the wings of the pterosaur that was pouncing on him. With a snap of his teeth, the pterosaur's narrow wings were easily bitten off by the Tyrannosaurus Rex. The Tyrannosaurus Rex whipped its head around, and the pterosaur's severed wing, by chance, landed right in front of the two, drenching them in blood. The broken pterosaur flapped its lone wing, attempting to fly, but the blood-fueled Tyrannosaurus, spurred on by its ferocity, roared and swooped down again, biting the pterosaur's tail just as it was about to take flight. With a flick of the Tyrannosaurus Rex's arm, the massive pterosaur was flung away like a rag. Coincidences are always frustrating. The massive pterosaur was flung out like a rag, only to crash down like a mountain as Alex and Emma twisted their bodies to flee. Alex looked up at the dark clouds descending overhead, his face filled with frustration. Isn't that such bad luck? Stop talking nonsense. Run, Emma cursed, seeing Alex still had the energy to talk, and her pace quickened a little. The two were already moving at a fast pace, but the pterosaur's massive body flew even faster, slamming down hard, hitting the two men as they raced. As expected, the two were crushed to the ground. They only managed to utter a single curse before their heads tilted and they both fainted. When they awoke, they found it was completely dark, the dome above them dotted with twinkling stars. Struggling to push the pterosaur off their bodies, Alex and Emma emerged from beneath its mutilated corpse, their bodies covered in its blood and flesh. "I think we should take a shower," Emma said with a hint of disgust, looking herself up and down. Alex tore a piece of pterosaur flesh from his chest and nodded, "Just what I want." As they finished speaking, a sudden rustling sound echoed around them. A fleeting, eerie green lanterns emerged from the surrounding jungle. Alex and Emma exchanged a glance, a flicker of fear in their eyes, and they both sprinted in the same direction, where the lanterns seemed to be fewer. Although Emma was also a mutant, her physique was no different from that of an ordinary person. She was no match for Alex, who had been transformed by the super soldier serum. After just a few steps, she was thrown far away. Alex noticed this in time, cursed under his breath, and scooped up Emma, running at full speed. As they moved, the lanterns around them suddenly sprang into life, emitting streaks of green light as they swiftly caught up with the two. The whistling wind rustled past her ears, and Emma stared at Alex, who held her in her arms, in disbelief. She couldn't believe Alex would save her, considering she had helped Zio fight him before. Though she had lost her telepathic powers, Alex's body remained intact, the enhanced physique granted by the super soldier serum now exerting its full force. Holding Emma, his speed was no less than the roaring beasts behind him. Alex had time to hold Emma on his back and glance at the herd behind him. As time passed, the sounds behind him faded, and the beasts gave up their pursuit. Alex's pace unconsciously slowed, and he turned to gaze at the empty space behind him, a look of triumph on his face. Just then, another strange roar echoed from nearby. Alex's expression suddenly changed, and he continued to run furiously. As he ran, he turned his head to look at Emma on his back with a hint of exasperation. "Didn't you say there were no living creatures in the forest? What's going on now?" Wave after wave, Emma's face flushed slightly at this, and she thought of her promise and wisely chose to keep silent. Emma's silence left Alex unsure what to say, so he lowered his head and ran. After running for a few minutes, Alex was surprised to find that the sound behind him was getting closer. Saber-toothed tiger. Emma also noticed this and turned to see a tiger with a pair of sharp fangs approaching like a flash of yellow lightning. Alex couldn't help cursing when he heard Emma's exclamation, "This is not Jurassic Park, but prehistoric park. Even saber-toothed tigers have run out." "Alex, put me down." Emma looked at Alex, who was accelerating again, and whispered, "If we go on like this, we will definitely be caught up by the saber-toothed tiger." Alex was slightly stunned when he heard it, and slapped Emma's round buttocks with his hands behind his back. While feeling the strange touch on his palms, he said hurriedly, Alex, will not abandon any partner, no mistake in one song, one post, one content, one book, one forum." Emma's pretty face flushed again at Alex's flirting with her. She snorted and said, "I'm Sebastian Shaw's man. We're enemies, not partners." Alex was silent for a moment, then said in a deep voice, "We were enemies before, and we may still be enemies in the future. But now, in this unknown jungle, we are partners." Emma's expression froze, and there was something strange in her eyes as she looked at Alex. Noticing the saber-toothed tiger getting closer and closer, Emma's face became increasingly anxious. While trying to control the saber-toothed tiger with telepathy, she shouted, "Actually, we can try to fight it. There's only one." Alex suddenly stopped and turned to see that there was indeed only one saber-toothed tiger behind him. He immediately looked at Emma with resentment. "Why didn't you tell me earlier? You made me run for so long." As he spoke, Alex put Emma down, drew his dagger, and rushed towards the saber-toothed tiger. Watching Alex grappling with the saber-toothed tiger, Emma suddenly realized that Alex was still a highly skilled warrior, having received the super soldier serum transformation. Taking on a saber-toothed tiger was no problem at all. Thinking of this, Emma's face flushed again, and she swallowed to be careful she was about to shout. P.S. This is last night's chapter. I originally planned to update it later in the night, but then Scorpio completely stopped working. Chapter 71 Swamp People. Fearing he might attract other beasts, Alex sought a quick victory. He struck the charging saber-toothed tiger's head with one fist, his other hand gripping a dagger, poised to slit its throat. Unfortunately, the massive tiger, stronger than a lion, possessed greater agility than a cat and possessed formidable strength. With a slight jiggle of its head, the tiger's fist was knocked away, sending Alex's body careening slightly. The dagger in his left hand narrowly missed the tiger's throat, slicing only a wisp of, for neither man nor tiger had much success in the first round. Realizing their formidable opponent, both cautiously retreated a few steps, confronting each other. That guy's got some serious strength. Alex shook his arms, looking in surprise at the saber-toothed tiger, which had also retreated. Emma looked at Alex with some concern, whispering, "Be careful, Alex." Alex nodded casually, then kicked off and charged at the saber-toothed tiger again. With their strength and speed nearly equal, Alex could only rely on his wits. Seeing Alex charging, the saber-toothed tiger raised its head, slightly opened its mouth, and with a low growl, leaped forward to pounce. But to its surprise, Alex suddenly fell mid-air, missing the oncoming saber-tooth. This sudden turn of events overwhelmed the saber-tooth, and by the time it could react, it was too late. Alex let out a strange laugh, and with a snap of his dagger, he slashed a massive gash in the tiger's abdomen. Blood gushed out, drenching Alex's already blood-soaked head. Devastated by the blow, the saber-toothed tiger struggled to regain its balance, its eyes filled with anger and fear. After a moment's hesitation, it staggered into the jungle, leaving a long trail of blood in its wake. The once evenly matched battle had suddenly turned, completely surpassing Emma's expectations. It wasn't until Alex reminded her that she snapped back to her senses. She looked at him with surprise. "How did you do that?" "Never mind all that. Let's find a place to wash off this blood." Alex, carrying Emma on his back, ran again, muttering, "If we keep going like this, who knows what we'll attract." Alex's words unfortunately proved true. Wild beasts pursued them along the way. They tried to shake them off if they could, but otherwise, Alex had no choice but to fight. As they fought, the blood on Alex's body not only didn't diminish, but grew thicker, and the number of beasts pursuing him grew. Furthermore, with the constant fighting, Alex's body continued to gain scars, and he inevitably became weaker. "This won't work. We have to find some place to hide." Emma supported the wounded Alex with both hands, turning to survey the dark jungle around them, her face wary, as if a beast might leap out at any moment. Alex leaned against Emma, nodding weakly in agreement. The jungle was dense with trees and hills, and Emma quickly found a cave. The only drawback was that it was quite narrow. They crawled inside, their bodies pressed together, each one warm and distinctly aware of the other's warmth. Alex, however, didn't care for this at the moment. His injuries were so severe, and with shelter, his tense nerves relaxed, and he quickly drifted off into deep sleep. Emma, on the other hand, felt uncomfortable, but didn't dare move for fear of disturbing Alex, so she forced herself to endure it. After enduring it for a while, she too fell into deep sleep. The early morning sun filtered through the dense branches and leaves, filtering through the rocks blocking the entrance. A hint of warmth gradually rose. Huddled together, they both leaned towards the ray of sunlight, only to be startled awake by the cold touch. After staring at each other for a moment, they suddenly separated, a trace of embarrassment on their faces. After a long silence, the two men, in perfect unison, pushed aside the rocks in front of the cave entrance and exited. After a night of frenzy, the jungle seemed to have returned to dead silence, with only the occasional chirping of unknown insects forming a forest song. "I'll go check the treetops," Alex said as he scrambled up a giant tree near the cave entrance with the agility of a monkey, climbing several meters in a matter of seconds. "Let's see if we can find some water." Both were covered in blood, and until they cleaned it off, they couldn't hope to remain safe in the jungle. Emma stood at the base of the tree, looking up at Alex as he gradually disappeared into the branches. Her heart suddenly began to beat wildly, and she wanted to climb up with him, to stand at the top of the tree and admire the view with him. Just as Emma was lost in thought, Alex leaped down from the several-meter-high tree trunk with a thud. Frightened Emma so much that she leaped several meters away in one leap. "I see a swamp, it's a bit far away, we need to hurry." Alex glanced at Emma curiously, turned his head and pointed in a direction, saying quickly, "It's too late. I'm afraid we'll encounter wild animals again." The swamp was unusually far. Alex and Emma walked for 3 or 4 hours without seeing a single sign of a beast. They did encounter several waves of wild animals along the way, from giant dinosaurs to smaller direwolves, all kinds of prehistoric and ancient creatures. "Why are we always encountering dinosaurs and not a single wild man?" Waving a dagger in his hand, Alex leaped from an unknown dinosaur, his face relaxed. Alex's words were merely a joke, but Emma analyzed them seriously. This forest isn't suitable for humans, with so many dinosaurs, saber-toothed tigers, and other wild beasts. Even if there are wild people, they should be outside the forest. Outside the forest? You mean the swamp? Alex shrugged, a little skeptical. Swamps can't be inhabited. Emma shook her head, bewildered. Alex, have you ever thought about what this place is? A vast forest with all sorts of dinosaurs, saber-toothed tigers, direwolves. Who could possibly gather them all together? Alex spread his hands and said helplessly, I'd love to know, but I guess it must be aliens. Aliens. Only aliens, beyond the reach of Earthlings, could do such a shocking thing. After another round of fighting, as the sun was about to set, Alex and Emma finally emerged from the forest. A boundless swamp lay before them. Pools of water, large and small, dotted the vast swamp like giant pearls scattered on the grass. Alex ran a few steps in joy, and just as he was about to jump into a small pond to wash off the blood, a figure suddenly emerged from the high ground in the distance. Naked and covered in thick hair, he looked like a wild man living in the swamp. Chapter 72 Temple News. There really are swamp people, Alex said teasingly, standing by the pond. Emma turned and looked behind him. Suddenly, Emma's expression changed drastically. She pointed off into the distance and shouted, Alex, come back. Alex turned in surprise and saw that many more swamp people had suddenly appeared from the high ground in the swamp. Their numbers were increasing, and their expressions suggested they were unhappy with their presence. Emma, can you read their minds? Alex backed away cautiously, a look of nervousness on his face. 2 fists couldn't stand up to 4 hands. Alex didn't have the courage to provoke so many swamp people. There really are swamp people, a kind of people who live in the swamp, Emma said anxiously, her brow furrowed. They're furious now. They want to kill us. Run. Emma stepped forward, grabbed Alex, and ran into the forest. Behind them, a group of swamp people rushed towards them, brandishing crude wooden and stone clubs and making strange cries. After a few steps, their roles switched. Originally, Emma was pulling Alex, but now Alex was carrying Emma on his back. As they ran, Alex said indignantly, we didn't do anything, why are they killing us? We invaded their territory. Emma turned to look at the swamp people chasing them, using telepathy to sense their thoughts. They're like wild beasts, anyone who trespasses must die. Alex straightened his body and lifted Emma up, complaining, they're just wild beasts, so brutal and unrefined. After running for a while, Alex turned to see that the swamp people were no longer behind him. He was surprised. Where are they? They went back a long time ago? Emma climbed down Alex's back reluctantly, and before Alex could say anything, she continued, I've discovered a lot from the swamp people's memories. This place is bigger than you can imagine. Tell me about it. Emma's words immediately put Alex's previous question aside and he asked curiously. Emma casually broke off a branch, swept away the dead leaves on the ground, and began to spread them on the ground. Soon, a map with rough outlines appeared. Pointing to the largest piece on the map, a corner of the U-shaped plate, Emma said in a deep voice, according to the memory of the swamp people, the forest we are in now is here. This is a very large area. What we see is just this small area near the edge. After a slight pause, Emma pointed to the groove of the U-shaped plate and continued, this is the swamp where the swamp people have lived for generations. Going to the left from here is a forest, and going to the right through the swamp is another forest. New humanoid races have appeared in this vast forest, such as apes, birdmen, pterosaurs and other orcs. Are you kidding? Alex looked at Emma with an incredible expression. Birdmen, orcs, do you think this is Azeroth? Emma glanced at Alex strangely, pointing to the simple map on the ground and continued, in addition to forests and swamps, this continent has many places and many races living there. At the other end of the continent, there is a huge plain. This is the territory of humans with advanced civilization. My head is a little dizzy. Could these people be aliens? There was an advanced civilization among a group of savages. Alex couldn't think of anything else except aliens. These people claim to be descendants of Atlantis. Emma's face became increasingly strange. She had telepathically communicated with Alex before and knew some things about him. Namer. Alex was stunned when he heard this, and after a while he spoke. Could this place be Atlantis? Did Atlantis sink into the sea? None of this is the key. Emma suddenly laughed and pointed to the center of the map, to the left of the plate where the descendants of Atlantis were located. It was a very small piece of land. The key is here, in the center of this continent. There is a floating island with a temple on it, the temple left by the gods in the legend of the swamp people. What do you mean? Alex was a little surprised. You're stupid. Emma rolled her eyes coquettishly, chuckling as she explained, these gods are definitely fake. I suspect this so-called temple was actually left by the people who created this continent. There's a good chance there's a way out. Alex suddenly understood. He looked at Emma with delight and anxiously asked, so, let's go now. It's not that easy, Emma said with a wry smile. Using the branch she used as a teaching stick, she pointed at the map on the ground and said with some resignation, the temple's in the center of the continent, and we're here now. Alex looked at where Emma pointed. It was the left-hand border between the swamp and forest. To reach the temple, they first had to cross the swamp and enter the forest on the other side. Then, exiting the forest and passing through part of the Atlantean descendants area, they would finally see the floating temple. Having witnessed the harshness of the forest, Alex could imagine that this would be a treacherous journey with no chance of survival. Thinking of this, Alex turned his gaze to the edge of the map, a blank area without any markings or boundaries. What about outside this continent? This is a vast ocean, the Galhan Sea. Emma glanced at the map and said slowly, the Galhan Sea is boundless, and there are also many humanoid races living in it. They can survive underwater and are extremely hostile to land creatures. They often go to war with swamp people and orcs. Going from the sea is even more dangerous. Alex smiled bitterly and waved his hand, pointing at the map and said helplessly, what else can I say? Just go. Without waiting for Emma to speak, Alex continued, be careful, walk slowly, you can eventually reach the temple, no mistake in the poem, no content, no book, no bar. Emma stared at Alex for a moment, nodded and asked, what should we do now? Go back. The swamp people are not easy to bully, and they are numerous and powerful. If they fight back like this, they will probably be beaten to death by the swamp people before they can take a few steps. Alex was stumped by the question. They hadn't figured out a solution to the forest's predicament yet, and the threat of the swamp people was already on the agenda. If they didn't find a way to deal with the swamp people, they wouldn't be able to cross the swamp area, let alone the forest on the other side of the swamp. Alex's head ached at the thought, and he began to miss teleportation. If there was teleportation, why would Alex have to worry so much? With just one thought, Alex could leave this damn place in an instant. P.S. It's a little late, but I finally caught up. To avoid further confusion among classmates, Scorpio would like to explain that the place where Alex is now exists in Marvel, but Scorpio has modified the map and some other things. I hope everyone understands. Since the book review area is too messy, Scorpio needs to clean it up. Please forgive those students whose reviews have been deleted. Chapter 73 The End of World War II. While Alex, trapped in an unknown land, racked his brains for a way to reach the temple, the world outside was undergoing a dramatic transformation. On the battlefields of World War II, since the Normandy landings, the Allied forces had been advancing with unstoppable force, leaving the enemy in a state of retreat. With the enemy on the verge of defeat, Red Skull miraculously resurrected and led the Hydra army back to the battlefields of World War II. He not only saved the enemy from their decline, but also dealt a heavy blow to the Allied forces landing in Europe. This crushing defeat severely damaged the Allied forces, their momentum fading. At the Allied command post, the champagne prepared to celebrate victory had barely been removed when the Allied generals gathered, their faces grim and gloomy. Tell me, what's going on? An American general with a stern face slammed the table and turned to look at Phillips, who was sitting at the end, his face like an angry lion. Didn't Captain America destroy Hydra? Isn't Red Skull dead too? Why do they still appear? Looking up at the furious general, Phillips' wrinkled face unconsciously revealed a hint of sarcasm. General Nemo, the report submitted by the Howling Commandos did not say that Hydra was destroyed. Cut off a head, and 2 more will grow. This is the creed of Hydra. Hydra is not so easy to be destroyed. As for Red Skull, he just fell off the plane. He survived and might be lucky. You? General Nemo's face flushed, but his anger grew stronger. He was about to speak but didn't want to be interrupted by another voice. All right, stop talking. The voice was intimidating, its tone calm and unquestionable. Hydra is here, so send out the Howling Commandos to chop off all 9 of its heads. General Nemo's face changed drastically upon hearing this. He turned to look at the middle-aged general at the top and spoke quickly. General, The Howling Commandos are no longer the same Howling Commandos. Before General Nemo could finish, Phillips spoke first. Ever since Captain America disappeared, the rest of the Howling Commandos have been forced away. The middle-aged general in the lead frowned slightly and looked up at Phillips. What happened? Seeing General Nemo's pleading look, Phillips ignored it and recounted everything that had happened. And so, Nick Fury was expelled from the army, Natasha returned to the Soviet Union, and Logan disappeared. Bring them back. The middle-aged general's brows deepened, and his tone became anxious. Phillips gave a wry laugh and shook his head, saying helplessly, even if we find them, it's useless. They still lack a leader. Captain America is missing, and there's no one to lead the Howling Commandos. Phillips had barely finished speaking when a strange laugh suddenly rang out. Perhaps, I can do it. The sudden voice startled everyone present. Turning to look, they saw two men suddenly appear behind the middle-aged general, one of whom was completely red, looking extremely strange. Sebastian Shaw. Phillips had the most experience with the Howling Commandos and knew a lot about the Hellfire Club. He recognized the man immediately. What do you want? You've met your match, and I'm here to help you. Sebastian Shaw chuckled, a look of pride on his face. The middle-aged general remained calm, not turning around, and asked in a flat tone, what do you want? Eradicating the tyrant is everyone's responsibility, isn't it? Sebastian Shaw said with a high-sounding tone, but the smile on his face made it clear that he had something to ask for. Upon hearing this, the middle-aged general said without further ado, without making any further demands. He firmly stated, okay, Hydra is in your hands, rest assured, my general, Sebastian Shaw will not let you down. Sebastian Shaw chuckled again, gave a rather unseemly gentleman salute, and disappeared with the Red Devil. When news of Red Skull's resurrection reached Japan, Strucker stood up from his chair in shock, his single eye filled with anxiety. Across from Strucker, a figure shrouded in black ninja attire chuckled and said calmly, it's just Red Skull, yet you're frightened like this? I don't think Hydra is anything more than that. Strucker ignored the ninja's jeers and paced back and forth. He suddenly stopped, turned to the ninja, and said urgently, Red Skull must die, or I won't be able to control Hydra. Red Skull's influence within Hydra was terrifying, otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to gather such a vast Hydra army the moment he appeared. You have to remember that the current leader of Hydra is Strucker, and he knew nothing of the Red Skull's resurrection from the very beginning. It wasn't until the end of a major battle that he received news of the Red Skull's resurrection, through war reports. Do you need my help? The ninja's voice grew serious, a hint of murderous intent lingering in it. Strucker nodded without hesitation, kill him, we'll work together, okay? The ninja spat out a single word, then vanished in a puff of black smoke. In Berlin, Germany, the Red Skull stood proudly before the mustachioed figure, his skinless red face gleaming with an intimidating light. This position no longer suits you. The world is mine. Hitler stared at the Red Skull in horror, his mustache trembling with rage. He pointed at the Red Skull and opened his mouth to curse, but the Red Skull grabbed Hitler by the neck and lifted him up. You can die, little bastard. With that, the Red Skull exerted force with both hands, attempting to strangle Hitler to death. But at that moment, 5 people suddenly appeared in the room. They were none other than Sebastian Shaw, Red Devil, and his group. Who are you? Red Skull realized something was wrong as he saw the sudden appearance of the 5 people. He immediately dropped his mustache and ran. Red Skull's escape clearly caught Sebastian Shaw and his group off guard. He was stunned for a few seconds before coming to his senses. That's pretty fast. Go catch up. Red Skull was just a human who had undergone an unsuccessful transformation with a super serum. He was much stronger than ordinary people, but when he met Sebastian Shaw's group of mutants, he was immediately outmatched and became nothing more than a punching bag. In a few seconds, Red Skull was captured. Riptide, take out some Hydra soldiers just for show. Looking at the stunned Red Skull, Sebastian Shaw turned to Riptide, then we'll go back. A few hours later, the Hydra army led by Red Skull was completely annihilated by Riptide's several tornadoes. Having accomplished his mission, Sebastian Shaw disappeared with Red Skull. Shortly after Sebastian Shaw's departure, a team of ninjas quietly arrived in Berlin, but unfortunately, they found nothing. What do we do now? Reply. Red Skull has been eliminated. Straker quickly received the news, breathing a sigh of relief, and secretly began to dismantle Hydra, aiming to completely seize control of the organization. However, without the support of Red Skull and the Hydra army, the Allies fell into decline again. They were no match for the regrouped Allied forces, and their defeat was truly inevitable. P.S. I'm so sorry for the hiatus yesterday. The power outage and internet were tragic. I'll do my best to catch up on the 2 updates. IO. Chapter 74 Not Dead. In an unknown land, Alex racked his brains but couldn't come up with any good ideas. He considered asking the swamp people for permission to pass through. Unfortunately, repeated attempts to communicate failed. Frustrated, Alex decided to force his way through. As a result, the two were pursued and blocked by tens of thousands of swamp people. Thanks to their speed, they barely escaped back into the forest. Countless attempts over several days failed. Alex and Emma retreated helplessly into the forest, watching the swamp people wielding clubs from afar, their faces filled with frustration. Alex, let's find another way, Emma panted with exhaustion, her plump chest trembling violently, her flushed face covered in sweat. Alex was in better condition, his face clear and his breathless, but his body was covered in scars, all inflicted by the swamp people. Hearing Emma's words, Alex kicked the rocks under his feet in annoyance and roared in anger. These swamp people are so despicable. We're just passing through, but they're acting like they have some deep hatred. As he was complaining, Alex suddenly heard a strange gurgling sound. He turned to see Emma, her head lowered, her face flushed. After running back and forth all day and having eaten nothing, they were already hungry. I'm hungry. Let's go back and get something to eat. Alex turned around and walked away, muttering as he walked, once we're full, I'm going to show these swamp people how powerful I am. After successfully hunting an unknown beast, Alex carried the beast, taller than himself, back to their home, a cave. It had been discovered 2 days ago by the two and had been transformed into their temporary home. Beyond the cave was a stream, its source a distant, mist-shrouded mountain, and its end in the swamp. After cleaning the beasts at the stream, they carried them into the cave, where a bonfire had already been lit. You're back, Emma called out, not even turning back, her gaze fixed on the cauldron simmering over the fire. The soup will be ready soon, hang on. Though the cave was simple, it contained everything from quilts to cooking utensils and other household items. These items had been stolen from the swamp dwellers, who in turn had looted orcs and the descendants of Atlantis. In the deepest part of the cave, 2 beds were located. Several tree trunks were fixed to the ground to form a bed frame, and a few quilts were placed on top, creating a simple wooden bed. Alex threw the beast on his shoulder to the campfire, lay lazily on his bed, turned his head to look at Emma who was busy, and said with some boredom, Emma, what do you think is going on outside? Is World War II over? Emma's hands froze when she heard that, looked up at Alex, shook her head and said, You are Alex, the captain of the Howling Commandos, you should know this best. Alex suddenly fell silent, his expression became a little gloomy, and after a while he said, I'm not a captain, Steve is. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Emma looked at Alex with guilt, and said hesitantly, but as far as I know, Sebastian Shaw didn't do what happened to Steve. Alex's face changed suddenly, his eyes staring at Emma, as if he wanted to swallow her. What did you say? Under Alex's eyes, Emma trembled slightly unconsciously, but still said calmly, I can telepathically, and Sebastian Shaw has no secrets that he can't hide from me. So Alex jumped over from the bed, grabbed Emma's neck with both hands, and shouted, You mentioned Steve on purpose. What on earth do you want to do? I just want to help you. Emma looked at Alex with a sad face, reached out and gently stroked Alex's face, and said softly, Although I can't sense your mind now, I know you are in pain and anxious, and I hope I can help you. Alex was silent, released Emma's hand, sat down on the ground dejectedly, and looked up at Emma. You know a lot. You have a lot of secrets. I can only know some of the basics. Emma coughed lightly, filled a bowl of soup, and carefully handed it to Alex. From what I know, I think you have been deceived. Alex took the bowl of soup, blew on it gently, and was about to take a sip, but when he heard the words, he suddenly raised his head and looked at Emma in surprise. What do you mean? Although I don't know who told you that Steve's affairs are related to Sebastian Shaw, I can be sure that this matter has nothing to do with Sebastian Shaw. Emma also poured herself a bowl of soup, took a sip carefully, and said slowly, and at that time, the Hellfire Club had reached an agreement with the Allies, and Sebastian Shaw would not have troubled Steve again. Why not? Alex was a little angry, and his tone became a little anxious. He has fallen into her hands several times, and it is normal for him to wait for an opportunity to retaliate. Sebastian Shaw is very ambitious. He wants to be the boss of the Hellfire Club. Emma poured another bowl of soup for Alex, shook her head and said, At this time, He can't and dare not do anything that goes against the will of the Hellfire Club. On the contrary, he will try his best to please you, because this will increase his bargaining chips in the Hellfire Club." Alex frowned, as if he didn't believe what Emma said. Emma saw Alex's suspicion and didn't elaborate, speaking to herself. "The Hellfire Club has no reason to target Steve, but that person told you it was the Hellfire Club's doing. That's highly suspicious." Alex couldn't help but think of the person who had told him that. With a start, he suddenly realized he might have been tricked. "You said he tricked me, so why did he do it?" Emma shrugged, chuckled, and said slowly, "There are many reasons. Maybe he wanted to use you to kill Sebastian Shaw, or maybe he wanted to use Sebastian Shaw to kill you, or maybe he simply wanted to sow discord between the Hellfire Club and the Allies." Listening to Emma's reasons, Alex suddenly realized how naive and adorable he was, and how foolish he was, to actually believe the words of someone she had threatened to submit to. As Alex thought about this, a sudden thought struck him. He looked at Emma excitedly and asked, "Is it possible that he was the one who did what happened to Steve, and then deliberately lied to me that it was Sebastian Shaw?" Emma frowned slightly and nodded, "Very likely. He's one of my men. He was coerced." Alex's thoughts grew increasingly agitated, circling the campfire. "He wanted to harm me, so he wanted to go after Steve." Alex suddenly stopped, staring at Emma and slowly said, "Tell me, in this situation, would he actually kill Steve, or would he spare his life temporarily as leverage?" "Of course," Emma said without hesitation. "So, Steve is still alive?" Alex jumped up excitedly, his face full of excitement. "Is that right?" Emma was stunned. She had been circling for so long, wondering if that was the reason. "Yes." Chapter 75 Dragon Knight. "I told you, Steve won't die so easily." Hearing Emma's affirmative response, Alex, like a believer receiving a divine response, a determined look on his face, his tone growing even more certain. "Steve won't die?" Seeing Alex's brow finally relaxed, Emma couldn't help but chuckle. She turned and began to tidy up the unknown beast, cutting off a piece of thigh meat, skewering it and roasting it over the fire. Soon, the spacious cave was filled with the aroma of meat. A quiet night followed. The next morning, Alex was the first to wake up, as usual. After a quick wash, he began training at the cave entrance. After a brief warm-up, Alex began reviewing the fighting techniques Logan had taught him, not neglecting the techniques of Nick Fury and Natasha. Alex had never been a hard worker. After possessing the super soldier serum that had given him a super strong body, except for a period of time spent studying fighting techniques with Logan and the others, he preferred to lie in the sun in the barracks. If possible, Alex would have loved to lie down by the stream at the entrance of the cave, listening to the gurgling water and enjoying the early morning sunshine. Unfortunately, this wasn't a safe place. A wild animal could leap out of the bushes at any moment. For the sake of his life, Alex had to work harder. After practicing for a while, Alex felt drenched in sweat. Just as he was about to go to the stream to wash, a deafening roar suddenly rang out in his ears. Pterosaur. Alex was startled and turned to look. He saw a huge black shadow circling over the distant jungle, its outstretched wings faintly stained with blood. Emma also ran out of the cave upon hearing the sound. Her unadorned face had a charming and lazy expression. She was wearing only a long dress made of animal skin, and the exposed white skin made her look even more sexy. But Alex didn't notice Emma. His eyes were fixed on the pterosaur flying in the air. He said dreamily, "Emma, what do you say? Let's catch a pterosaur and fly it through the swamps and forests." Emma's mouth opened slightly, and she looked at Alex with an expression of disbelief. "Are you dreaming? You think it's impossible?" Alex pouted, holding his head high and saying proudly, "Have you heard of dragon riders? We will be dragon riders, flying through swamps and forests, conquering unknown temples." Emma stared at Alex blankly, feeling as if she had never met Alex before. "Okay, I'm kidding." Alex thought Emma had no sense of humor. She shrugged and said seriously, "Do you really think it's impossible for us to fly a pterosaur through the swamps and forests? How do you plan to tame a pterosaur? Make it obey us?" Emma spread her hands and looked at Alex with amusement. Alex pointed at his head and said to Emma, "You have telepathy, right? You should be able to control the pterosaur, right?" Alex turned to look at the now vanished pterosaur and scoffed, continuing, "I imagine a pterosaur, with its bulk and lack of brains, wouldn't have very strong telepathic powers." "That's a good idea, but have you ever considered how far it is from here to the other end of the forest?" Emma glared at Alex, annoyed. I'm afraid I'll be a fool before we even cross the swamp. Telepathy consumes mental energy, and prolonged control can be extremely damaging. If only I still had my powers. Alex shook his head in disappointment, his face gloomy. After the teleportation failed, Alex discovered that his own copying abilities were gone, too. He could no longer replicate Emma's telepathy. Emma, unaware that Alex was referring to his cloning ability, whispered soothingly, "Your mind is sealed. If you can open it, your teleportation will return." Alex shook his head, gave a wry smile, and changed the subject, saying, "We're out of mushrooms at home. I'll go find some." Then he turned and headed into the jungle near the cave. After walking for over half an hour, Alex had harvested a large harvest of mushrooms. Just as he was about to turn back, he suddenly heard bursts of painful gasps, loud as the pressure of a pressure cooker. Surprised, Alex cautiously approached the source. After a few steps, through a dense clump of trees, Alex unexpectedly spotted a pterosaur collapsed on the ground, breathing heavily with its narrow beak slightly open. Its massive wings, several meters long, drooped at its sides, overpowering the undergrowth. A pool of blood gradually gathered on the pterosaur's abdomen, and a faint scent of blood drifted towards it. It wasn't long before the beasts of the forest, following the trail of blood, found their way here, and this pterosaur would become a meal. Alex, unwilling to join in the fun, turned and tried to leave, but just then, he noticed the pterosaur's eyes were open, staring back at him. 2 pearl-sized tears streamed from its sockets. Alex had always believed that all things have spirits. Seeing the tears in the pterosaur's eyes, Alex's heart trembled, and he paused. He turned and slowly walked towards the pterosaur. "How can I help you?" the pterosaur murmured softly, slowly raising a wing. Alex peered over and was surprised to find a plump egg hidden in its belly, its wings perfectly covering it. Alex crawled under the pterosaur, carefully cradling the egg in his arms. He walked back to the pterosaur, looked at it, and whispered, "Is this your child?" Judging from the egg's location, it must have been freshly laid. The huge egg was stained with blood and still emanated faintly from it. The pterosaur's head slid along the ground, as if nodding. Alex looked into its eyes and remained silent for a long time before asking, "You want me to raise it?" Alex had read many such stories but had never believed them. But now, he suddenly believed them. Sure enough, the pterosaur nodded again, its eyes filled with gratitude. Alex carefully cradled the enormous egg in his arms, looked at the dying pterosaur, and said solemnly, "Don't worry, I'll take good care of it." Watching the pterosaur close its eyes contentedly, Alex quickly carried the egg away, fearing that any predators would find it soon. When Alex returned to the cave carrying the giant dragon egg, Emma's face was filled with surprise. "Are we having a better meal today?" She thought of the egg as food. "No, I'm going to hatch it and raise it." Alex held the egg tightly in his arms, looking at Emma warily. Emma couldn't help but roll her eyes and said in disbelief, "Are you really going to be a dragon tamer?" Alex shook his head and said in a deep voice, "This is what its mother gave me." After Alex finished recounting the pterosaur's dying wishes, Emma's beautiful eyes couldn't help but turn red. With a hint of tears in her voice, she slowly said, "Okay, we'll take care of it together. P.S. Happy New Year everyone." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.